Billionaires that have made their small amounts of money from this COVID tragedy, as expected.
Small amounts of money, Eric?
It's just small amounts of money.
A couple of hundreds of millions?
Just a couple of hundreds of millions. You know, COVID is a global big business. So when a Kenyan makes 100 million, it's a small player.
The issue here really isn't the making of the 100 million.
Yeah.
No. It is at what cost?
It is how.
The how even, I may even overlook. At what cost?
At what cost?
Yes. Because it isn't just straightforward business where somebody was in the business of supplying something which was needed at a price which was considered reasonable. No, it isn't that.
But we'll be discussing that as well. And also, this morning, a couple of senators have not slept.
Unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
And the question is, willingly or unwillingly?
They haven't slept.
They have not slept.
And how do we know this?
Because they have been tweeting all night.
Or maybe there are people who tweet on their behalf.
There's somebody who is a very good scriptwriter called Cleopa Malala. Now, Cleopa Malala is a senator for Kakamega County. Had some visitors at his gate from around from around 11 p.m. Throughout the night. And the visitors were identifying themselves as DCI officers.
Okay.
And they had come to pick him up because they'd like to go and question him in the middle of the night. And they'd been sent to just come and ask him to accompany them to the police station. So there was a whole back and forth. And there was also Senator Dr. Langat, the senator for Bomet. Also, same fate. And their comrades were there as well. So that is something we'll also be discussing. Today is the day that they expect to go back to the Senate to look at the proposal by Senator Were and also to see whether this time, they'll cross over the line. Yeah.
Crazy stuff that's going on here.
Yeah. But remember, we are all fighting COVID-19. In this war against COVID-19, a lot has happened in the last 24 hours, fellow Kenyans.
In the last 24 hours, some of the lowest cases that we've seen reported so far. Also, this is against testing that's happening in the country. 271 cases in Kenya. This was recorded yesterday, taking the national tally to 30,120. 474 fatalities with a good 16,567 recoveries. Still at under 400,000 cases, 391,416 samples having been tested around the country. And now we see that Nairobi, still being the highest, is followed by Uasin Gishu and Migori. Interestingly, in Migori, where 100 beds were stolen. 100 beds were disappeared. Cannot be found. I don't know how else you want to describe it, but all right. The third highest numbers in the country in that particular county. If we want to look at this vis-a-vis the rest of the world, 21,824,807 positive cases so far for COVID on the globe, with 14,558,328 of those having recovered. Okay, so now let's look at this country by country. Where it continues to stand out at us, the United States, 5.5 million, still continuing to report cases of spread of COVID in schools. So you have children now under the age of 16 now being affected across the United States. Specifically
Tricky word that.
particularly.
Okay, carry
I
on.
told you it was a quiet weekend. I didn't speak much. So, specifically in the southern United States, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, they continue to discover new infections here. The question is, has this community transmission come as a result of schools having opened again, and some parents then refusing to take their children back to school? Some parents now saying that they will do online learning for their kids, and they're not going to put them in harm's way. The president remains hard and fast on this and says schools are going to remain open. We're not closing schools. We're going to fight this thing tooth and nail. Okay. Brazil with now 3,340,197 cases, and India climbing steadily, very rapidly actually, because we now see India is probably going to get to the 3 million mark in no time. And of those 3 million, 51,000 have resulted in death. Of those 2.6 million rather, 51,000 have resulted in death. And Russia is inching closer and closer to the 1 million point mark. With South Africa's infections having slowed down just a tad, they're still pretty high at 587,345 with 11,839 deaths. Now, interesting something that has happened. Peru was one of those countries that had quite a number of infections as Central American states, but now, having gone beyond the cases that Mexico, who we've been looking at over the last couple of weeks, has had. Peru now with 535,946 cases. However, they have more cases than Mexico, but they have half the number of deaths, even less than. So with 535,000 cases, they've got 26,281 deaths, and Mexico with 522,000 cases has 56,757 deaths.
What's that being attributed to?
The thing is that Mexico, from the very beginning, they were never able to get a handle on this. And by the time that they started to look towards medical care or the system itself, it was, people had actually gotten to the point whereby the symptoms were very, very bad. The proximity of their borders with the United States, of course, cannot be ignored, with Texas and New Mexico having some of the highest cases in the continental U.S.
But bear in mind also that the population of Peru is a quarter of that of Mexico. So even if you look at the numbers, if they are equaling Mexico, that should be alarming.
They are surpassing Mexico.
They're actually more.
Yes.
Yeah, they're more.
Yes.
Because Peru with 33 million people and Mexico with 129 million people, and Peru having more than the number that is in Mexico, that's a problem. So 83,000 tests per population turn out positive. 796 deaths per 1 million population. And 16,227 total cases per 1 million population. So, I mean, it's big numbers here that we're looking at.
These numbers will continue increasing. Yes, they will. There may be other reasons. There's a multiplier effect that comes with a certain threshold of infections having been reached. But then there is also the contribution of testing. And remember, in the absence of testing, it is very possible that people may have been infected and yet they do not know they've been infected.
Yeah.
Then when you throw in the equation of people who are infected but are asymptomatic, then you have a tender keg here actually.
True.
Because again, we now then delve into the realm of the things we don't know. And what we don't know about COVID is something that should be of great concern. Yes.
True. The unknown should concern us.
Every time you read of a country that seems to have had a handle on it, something else pops up. Now, this to me isn't bad news. It just means that there were very many cases that were underlying. They were not known. There are people who had even tested probably negative, but maybe that was during a window period. So the reality about COVID is that in many ways it's still early days yet. There is still a great deal more we do not know about COVID. So whatever we know, we should hold fast onto, for the simple reason that if it'll help prevent either the possible infection, or it'll keep you out of, should we say, harm's way, the infectious harm's way, then you should. Because in the absence of that, what we will end up doing is ensuring that these numbers now rapidly move upwards.
Upwards.
Yes.
Speaking of countries that have been able to keep things under wraps, we've not looked at Rwanda for a while. Rwanda's cases now are at 2,453 with 8 deaths. But look at what they've been able to do with just the information that they do know. And being concerned about the unknown, Rwanda has still been able to keep this relatively concerned. We know that Rwanda has a population of just under 13 million people. However, they've been able to contain this in a manner that, honestly, nobody else has been able to. And we want to look at Uganda as well. We heard President Yoweri Museveni saying last week that, you know what, guys, You don't need to be in these political rallies. We can still keep this thing at bay if you stay away. And Uganda, with 1,500 cases, has 13 deaths. This is a typical example of practicing what you preach. And they've actually been able to keep this thing.
When is Uganda's next general election?
2020. Yeah? Hold on.
He just got the nomination.
He got the nomination. So.
Yeah, it's next year.
2021, yes.
It's next year.
Yeah.
So let's give him time.
You
As
think
he
he
says
might
that.
change his stance and go out and have public rallies?
Come on.
Let's stay. We've been able to keep COVID at bay. We've been able to, contain
That he was
it
driving
relatively
around and
well.
people wanted to come and greet him. And
He told them,
hey,
no, stay back.
Stay back. All right? Stay back. Okay.
I have not yet returned to my father.
Let us give him some time
Oh, well, okay.
and see. When the campaign period gets into proper
High
full
gear.
gear,
The
we will
stance
see.
might
But
just
I consider
change.
also that COVID is an opportunity in very many ways. Some very positive, some completely nefarious. See, because of COVID, can you imagine the number of rallies you can just put a halt to?
Yep.
Can you imagine the campaign
You'll be
process?
the only one who's talking using the national platform. And then everybody else. He'll be able to contain everybody else, but he will be able to walk, to drive around.
There's that
And
little,
stand somewhere and tell people, stay far, but you see?
there's that little detail. And there's also time to improve radio services, TV services.
Yeah.
All manner of things that would, should we say, assist in this process of campaigning.
6:15. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's see how the weather looks like today, this 17th day of August, and then we start to look at the big stories of the day. Good morning.
The weather with Spice
It's mostly
FM.
cloudy in Nairobi at 13 degrees. We're going to look at a high of 23 today and a chance of showers later on. It's light rain showers already being experienced in Njeri at 14 degrees. It's going to go to a high of 21 and lows of 13, where it's partly cloudy in Nakuru this morning. It's going to be wet later on with highs of 24 and lows of 13. Mostly cloudy conditions is what we experienced in Eldoret this morning. Thunderstorms are forecasted for later with highs of 20 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 20. It's going to warm up a little bit till highs of 28 and lows of 19. And the showers that are expected will cool things down considerably. It's always going to be a wet afternoon in Kakamega. It's currently partly cloudy at 16. And we'll see highs of 24. 24 degrees and mostly cloudy in Malindi. Highs of 28 and lows of 23. In Mombasa, it's cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Showers are expected to start anytime now. Let's look out into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 19, with showers expected later. Mostly cloudy conditions is what we'll experience in Dar es Salaam today. Currently at 22 degrees, we'll go to a high of 30, come down to a low of 21. It's a chilly, crisp morning in Johannesburg at 4 degrees. Highs of 19, coming down to a low of 3. In Lagos this morning, it's 24 degrees, clear skies. Sunny conditions expected for the day, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Let's look into Paris, where there's a thunderstorm warning for yellow later Partly cloudy conditions currently at 17 degrees and a sprinkle expected later to turn into thunderstorms with highs of 24 and lows of 16. It's also 16 degrees in London currently. Clear skies. It'll change later though to thunderstorms as the rainy summer months continue. Highs of 22 and lows of 16. And we'll wrap things up for now in New York, where it's mostly cloudy Sunday night at 21, waking up into Monday morning. Highs of 22 and lows of 19.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
19
FM.
and a half minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to the Situation Room. If you're just joining us, the live stream is up, Spice FM, KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. CT Muga. So you said this is a week for Kenya?
Not week. This is a week where Kenya will get prominence. But even as I was thinking about this, something interesting occurred to me. That when I look at these proverbs and sayings and I translate them into a language that I know beyond English, say Kiswahili, or my mother tongue, I was amazed to find that the equivalent is actually available in many languages. So this is a week where I will mention specific proverbs or specific sayings that are Kenyan, but I would like our listeners to perhaps give it a thought and try and find the equivalent in their backyards.
In their languages.
Yes, and because what I found was that somehow the meaning resonates a little more. Okay? Now, the saying that I wanted to put forward this morning is a very simple one. I found it interesting in its simplicity. It says, when a man is coming towards you, you need not say, come here.
When a man is coming towards you, you need not say, come here.
Or let's make it gender sensitive. When
somebody's coming towards you,
you need not say, come here. You're heading there anyway.
Is there a Swahili version of that?
I thought about it and I couldn't come up with anything that could perhaps be an exact replica. But what I thought was one which came close was Subira huvuta heri. Yes. All good things come to
those who wait. So if it's coming, it's coming.
If it's coming, it's coming. It's heading in your direction.
Okay. Let's start with the headlines. What do you have? That's big and interesting.
It's all big. Okay, so so let's look on search for 2022 poll line gathers space, or rather space really, or pace. Uhuru's successors is what it's being called here on the front page of the Standard. Kotu boss Francis Atwoli yesterday hosted a delegation of Jubilee, KANU and ODM leaders in his Kajiado home, from David Murave to Peter Kenneth, Atwoli himself, Gideon Moy. And I'm very happy to know that they're all wearing masks, at least this time. And looking into the details of that story, unfortunately, we're already getting people revved up back into election and politicking mode, as it were. And so there's a succession in the offing, is what we are being told. Governors. Uhuru, Raila win governors in last effort to end cash sharing row. Governors have thrown their weight behind the proposal to freeze implementation of the disputed revenue sharing formula until the county's vote is increased to 348 billion shillings. The governors support a proposal by nominated Senator Petronila Wera that counties continue with the expired second-generation formula that shared out 316.5 billion shillings until they receive an additional 31.5 billion from the Exchequer. The proposal is said to have the backing of President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. It differs from the one fronted by Senator Mithika Linturi and which has the backing of Deputy President William Ruto. Linturi's formula proposes to cap the equitable share at 270 billion and the difference of 46 billion be subjected to the Commission on Revenue Allocation sharing formula. It was backed by governors. The proposal backed by the governors will ensure that no county loses funds. However, a closer scrutiny of the formula shows that 9 counties stand to lose more than 22.5 billion shillings, with Mandera leading with the losses of 1.3. Okay. Now, ahead of today's crucial vote, the Council of Governors has officially voiced its support for the Were formula. The Council's chairman, Governor Wycliffe Oparanya, called on the divided Senate to adopt the amendments by Were so that counties can begin to receive shareable revenue. I am told, and I quote, there is a proposal by Senator Were which is proposing more money to the counties. This means all counties will be cushioned. It is a proposal that we support as governors, according to Oparanya. I plead with the senators that it is their responsibility to pass County Allocation of Revenue Act with the amendments by Were that will now ensure we get 348 billion instead of 316 billion.
So Senator Were's proposal is the one that she started tabling before they adjourned. And now they're coming back to continue that conversation this morning. There are those that have actually also started arguing that, you see, what Senator Were's proposal is basically saying is the difference between Sakaja's and Were's. Sakaja's was saying, look, let's look at the 316 billion shillings, 0.5 billion that counties are going to receive this year. It's a similar amount to what counties were receiving in the last financial year. So use the same formula that was used in the last financial year, that is Formula 2, to distribute this 316 billion shillings. Should there be any increase in future allocations to counties, even by a bob, that shilling is subjected to the third basis formula. But the cap is 316 that shall be distributed according to basis 2, and then everything else according to basis 3. Then in comes Senator Were. Were she to be the one to be asked, she would say that give that 316.5 billion shillings, yes, but increase at 31.5 billion shillings from the National Treasury to be used with the new formula. Now, it's not clear to many how this 31.5 billion shillings is going to come from the National Treasury to the formula. Using what law? Because already the division of revenue bill has been passed, which is talking about how much the national government retains, how much the county governments receive.
Yeah.
So this 31.5 billion shillings, what is it going to be called? Is it coming in a supplementary budget or something else? I mean, those are the details that are still.
I think in responding to that question, the question that comes to my mind is, what is really playing out here? I mean, there's the usual suspects. We think, well, it's 2022. Everything is 2022.
Yeah.
And then there seem to be some young Turks who seem to have decided to move away from the script. Yes, that's what it actually appears to be. But what really is playing here? Because what if all this is choreographed?
What if it is? Because I can't run away from that little thing that was snuck in there saying that it's a boost for Huru and Raila in the cash row. It's turning it all to seem as if the two sides are either, supporting for the presidency or for particular powers that be, as opposed to it really being an issue of coming together and agreeing. So, I mean, it would show you that it could be more than just allocation that is playing out here. Well, I mean, look, with all that's happening right now, people being almost arrested overnight, people being asked questions, accounts being frozen, loss of sleep overnight. It seems like it's more than just, a debate over how this county cash will be allocated or shared. It would seem that people are being pressed in a corner to make a certain decision or to lean in a certain direction.
Why?
That's the thing, though. What kind of leverage does it give you for politics?
For instance, all along, if we look at the way this conversation has been framed, it appears as if Raila and Uhuru are on one side, and they're
Yes.
the ones who've been insisting and not moving and not budging.
Yeah, but-
Why?
Well, that's why I'm saying that why are we assuming that there's even a tiff to begin with? Why can I not consider that the entire thing could be choreographed? Because the leading lights who seem to be championing this perspective that is causing the hoo-ha are in Jubilee.
Yes, all of them.
Now, when you say Jubilee, tongue in cheek, you say, who's Jubilee? But they're in Jubilee. So, the moment that comes in, and I have to ask, what really am I seeing here? Consider for a single second. Something would be a little more credible if you allow a little debate on it. All right? Remember, the fact that we keep having our focus shifted towards what's happening in the Senate, it doesn't mean other things that are supposed to happen in the country are not happening. No, they're happening. But if this takes center stage, that is the focus. So, that has been our focus. We're going for an 8th session, are we?
9.
9th.
We're doing well. We're
Yes.
heading towards 10. May it
Who's
even-
to say that it's again not another opportunity to show whose is bigger, and it just happens to be that the Senate floor is the platform upon which this can happen. Perfect timing, because at this time you should be debating over who gets allocation. So here's another opportunity for the push and pull. It was a by-election last year. It was removal of those who didn't toe the line in a certain direction. And now here it is. It's county allocation, pitting one person against the other. But there are things that are happening behind the screen.
As far as I'm concerned, because these are politicians, I would argue that there is something else that, even as this matter is reported on a daily basis, there's something that we are not being told.
There's something else cooking.
There's something else cooking.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not just because
It's not necessarily a Tanga Kieleweke fight,
No,
by the way,
no.
because you can find that there are Tanga
It isn't.
people who are strongly and
It isn't.
vehemently
Yeah.
for the formula
For the
as
formula.
as
Yes.
it's presented.
Yes.
And then there are those who are completely against it.
Yes.
And there are those who are Kieleweke who are the same.
it's like this debate has formed, should we say, a new body within Senate. It's like a new political party within Senate.
a new
Yes. That has collected from all the parties.
some coalition of sorts.
Exactly.
right?
So this is why I'm saying that I am not dismissing the idea that this may very well be something very decently choreographed by people who think ahead.
Do you think these guys are also aware that are they part of the choreography, or are they unaware
They are.
that they're just puppets?
They
You
are.
think they went in blind?
They are.
This 24, you think all of them are in the same, reading the same script?
I believe at some point
we are doing this
how
to
many,
distract.
let's start with how many senators do we have?
47.
Precisely.
Well, 47 delegations.
Exactly.
Votes,
So essentially what we're saying is about half the number.
Yeah.
It's possible.
That all of them know.
It's very, very possible. 47 is a small number. And 4 is an even smaller number.
Some of them would go out blurting out and saying what's happening.
Yes,
They'll
they
forget.
would. But you see, when you have so much going on, who will believe you? Which is the more believable narrative? The narrative that seems to hold sway here, the narrative that this thing is going to disadvantage some people and we are fighting against it. That narrative means here are people who've decided that they want to present themselves as the champions of the people's interest.
Yeah.
All right? And in so doing, paint the other party as the naysayers. These are the people who want the status quo to be maintained at the cost of the livelihood of the common Mwananchi. And then there are those who want to give us the impression that they're being reasonable and sensible and balanced about it. Politicians.
If they wanted to have this allocation done weeks ago, 9 weeks ago, if they wanted to have had this done really 9 weeks ago, it would have been done.
28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we continue looking at other headlines of the day. Good morning.
traffic.
Okay, so there was a terrible accident on Thika Road last night, right around Del Monte, and leading towards. It left quite some damage on the road, so that's going to affect traffic inbound already this morning, and we can already see the result of that. And then further down the road this morning, quite early, about 10 minutes or so ago, there was an accident right around Roy Sambo, and so that affects traffic, and we know that already. Okay, so Outer Ring is flowing very smoothly this Monday morning. We know that there will be quite a lot of traffic inbound from Mombasa Road today. 'Tis the day after the weekend. Okay, so let's see what else is happening in other parts of the city. It's looking good in most parts, guys. Coming in from Thika Road to the city centre. Also coming off Mombasa Road, not too much of drama. So far, so good. It looks good on Gong Road as well as Langata Road, and coming out of Westlands as well. It hasn't built up too much. We're going to take a look at it in just a bit and see how that may have changed. Not to forget, you can let us know what you see. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. We want to know what you see and make it easy for people to move this Monday morning.
Everything nice. All right. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
4 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're still looking at other big stories in today's dailies. What do you have, City Muga?
What I have is leaders oppose leasing of Nzoia sugar, say it's a scam. Remember, the government came up with a scheme recently to try and revive sugar factories in the western part of the country.
Yep.
And the understanding was that, remember, there was the debate of should they sell them, should they do what? And they said no.
They're heavily indebted. So
Yes.
what
Said no,
do?
lease. Come to an understanding that.
So write off the debt, and then now
Yes.
lease them to private.
Yes, exactly. So that at least they start on some, should we say, sound business footing.
Mm-hmm.
But now, leaders in not just Western Kenya, but in the Bungoma area, have come out and said clearly, and they've been joined by Mboli Halwale saying, their narrative is that the government is actually selling the sugar factories. And they say, stop selling the sugar factories at a song, for a song. Now, if you come from a sugar growing area, you will understand that if you just stop for a moment and just halt the politics around sugar, and you look at what the benefits of sugar are, the truth of the matter is that the way we grow our sugar is not economical. It's not even economically viable. The smallholder, the thinking behind it, if you want to make it competitive in the world market, our sugar growing is actually not competitive. For the simple reason that the way this thing works is with economies of scale. Our neighbor right here in Sudan, next door, they have a sugar setup called Canana. My goodness. Just the massive acreage that has been put to that particular plant guarantees that, one, they'll produce it at a much lower cost because it's mechanized. Okay? Whatever is produced within the sugar factory, they ensure that the byproducts are also put to use. And by the way, the byproducts of the cane are actually more valuable than the actual white sugar that we keep talking about here. Either you can use it for fuel. When I say fuel, fuel for the factory itself, fuel in vehicles if you produce alcohol from it, and many other things that you can actually do with it. But why our sugar production is important is because it provides livelihood and it is considered a cash crop for very many small holders. But for it to actually work, government subsidy has to be considered.
Has to be considered.
Yes. And when I talk about subsidy, I mean the government has to give the sugar production in the country a favored status. Meaning, we make it uncompetitive for other people to bring in their sugar.
We protect it.
Protect it. Yeah.
So the leaders from, is it Mumias?
It's, no.
Bungoma.
Nzoia sugar is actually in the Bungoma area, yes.
They're speaking the same language as the leaders from the Greater Lake Region Economic Bloc come up with and said, no, we want to be very much involved in this. When I hear these stories, well, at the back of my mind, I can't fail to look back at our Kenyanese and see that these are lucrative businesses that are about to be handed over to the private sector. And it's government leasing to the private sector. It's government leasing a factory that has basically been brought to its knees to the private sector.
Actually, in many cases, Eric, it's the government leasing its factory because it actually belongs to the government, its factory.
To the private sector, right?
Yes, that's what the government is doing.
And there are people who may be trying to position themselves here so that they can take advantage of that process.
Eric, they've already positioned themselves. By the time we're talking about leasing, it isn't as though that's the beginning of the conversation.
It started a long time ago.
That's the tail end of the conversation. And when leaders come out, it's because they understand the benefits and the profits that one can make from this. And they feel they also need to profit, not just in trying to champion the benefit for the Mwananchi.
Its own personal need.
Yes, but also what can we as leaders benefit? Because it is clear that if this is going to happen, then we ought to have a say.
Yep.
Yes.
So much of the back and forth, the noise that we hear is, from where I see it, it's politicians, political figures negotiating.
They are negotiating. Yes.
So
a lot of political
yourself,
noise is just that negotiation.
If you don't talk to me, I will go back to the people and tell them that this.
You know, this discussion I've been reading, I've been following this discussion for some time. And I have been hoping to read how it is the Mwananchi, the small-scale holder, can be involved in also owning a piece of this and in having a say.
And that doesn't come up at all.
I don't see it. I mean, I read and I think maybe I haven't read it right.
Yeah.
I look at another paper, a reporting.
These leaders are not talking about organizing the people so that the people can form for companies that can then go and lease from the government.
Eric, Eric, you know the farmers are already formed. They already have SACCOs, by the way. Okay, there is no government sugar factory which does not have a SACCO that represents the farmer.
Yeah.
What they've done in the past is they've ensured you get products, you get fertilizer, you get seedlings, and that they even come in and help you harvest. It's not that they don't exist. It's strengthening what has existed before and making sure it works so that this farmer has a say.
Has a say.
I don't hear that discussion. And this is what I was rather hoping I would hear.
This is the change that you're hoping to see, because previously this was the problem, that the farmers then who bore the brunt of the responsibility to produce this thing then were never given a voice, were never heard.
They got the short end of that
all the time.
Yes.
And so then you have what would be a facelift for the sugar industry, but with the same ingredients.
And you don't hear a discussion that involves this person who does the back-breaking work to produce. You don't hear it. And this is what you ought to hear. An opportunity like this should be one where now the farmer actually has a say. Remember,
because they understand the nitty-gritty of it.
If you understand the debate and the politics around cash crops in this country, it's the same discussion that coffee growers have been having. How do I sell my coffee directly? Because I'm the one who's producing it anyway. And the reason was there's this person we refer to as a middleman who benefits more than I, the actual farmer. So it's not just a debate that begins and ends with the sugar industry. It's a debate that should be carried on, whether it's the tea industry, whether it is a coffee industry,
whether it's maize.
It's a debate because there are Kenyans who actually rely on this produce, not just for their livelihood, for their upkeep. It is their life.
It's their life.
Yes.
Well,
but maybe it's better if it just goes to a private company and then let the private company deal with farmer associations.
You know, the problem with
because the moment you bring it to say that farmers collectively then own this, you're always going to have somebody at the top. Look at the problems that we're having with KTDA. KTDA is basically owned by tea farmers.
Yes, it is.
But look at what has happened to KTDA over time.
KTDA, the ownership has been iffy in the sense that there's a time you weren't sure that it was farmers who owned it or the government who owned it. Is that not so? But with the time and with the changes, we now know it is farmers. But even as we say this, I look at the development of our coffee, tea now, and sugar industries. These are industries that the vagaries of climate change and what have you notwithstanding were profit-making industries.
Yep.
These farmers were wealthy people. They didn't need, they were genuinely wealthy. Even the small scale holder was a well-to-do person. They knew that their coffee or their tea or the sugar could meet their needs and beyond.
And beyond.
So we are not talking about something that, and it's not as though the demand suddenly went down, the demand had diminished. No, it didn't.
It is because of management.
Yes.
If you look at it, there's some element of public, right? Not private, the public. So there's no proper accountability, and the way our system has structured, the way our community, our society has basically just broken down, such that management of anything that's public is not management. It is going to be mismanagement.
Yes.
This is the problem.
Look
at, for example, the farmers who grow barley and such others, and they are
and
contracted,
hops and what have you.
and they're contracted by a private entity.
You don't hear complaints
called KBL, or the tobacco farmers who are contracted by the cigarette manufacturing company. Because this company is basically geared towards, and it's thinking about ensuring that it maintains its supply chain, it will deal with the farmers because it wants to make sure that it makes money.
And they know the farmer is important, in that
order
chain.
for them to make money,
chain.
the farmer then needs to be well taken care of.
Yeah.
Yes.
If EABL was given to government, that it became a public institution.
Oh dear.
Dead.
Well,
Dead.
So essentially, you've referred to the government as an undertaker.
Ah, yes.
counting skeletons as they go. Well,
It's 6:45, and then let's take a quick break and then come back and look at other stories. Good morning. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke as well as Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can also join the conversation by texting us or even just sending us messages on Instagram, Spice FM KE as well. Good morning.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
12 minutes to 7. So, Nduh, what story do you have?
So governors seek to divorce KEMSA. They were married before, but clearly they are not happy with this arrangement. The governors want the national government to allow counties to buy drugs, medical equipment and other materials from other suppliers and end the monopoly of the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. Council of Governors Chairman Wycliffe Oparanya yesterday said the controversies and scandals that have rocked KEMSA in the recent weeks.
Good slip, that.
Isn't it? Is evidence that the agency is enjoying unwarranted monopoly. Speaking at his Karen home in Nairobi, Mr. Oparanya said that while the question of whether counties should be given the free will to purchase supplies outside KEMSA was still in court, it's time the agency's monopoly is ended. We should be allowed to buy from anyone as long as they are competitive. And even so, we have agencies like the Kenya Bureau of Standards, which should ensure that everything counties buy is of good quality and of the required standards. This will enable counties to adequately respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the thing that would enable counties respond adequately. If they were able to buy from other
already,
parties
no.
apart from
When it comes
KEMSA.
to COVID, first of all, just for clarity and avoidance of doubt, counties are buying directly from whoever they want. When it comes to COVID, this was
This
been
was
a
one
subject
the-
of debate for some time.
it was
some
actually
time.
declared by the president.
The very first time.
That
That
we've
it was
already
open, basically.
had a conversation with the Council of Governors, and counties can now procure directly. I think the issue is going forward whether they want to deal with KEMSA, and I am
forward and even now, they don't want
opposed
to.
to that. I'm opposed to.
Why are you opposed, Derek?
Because I think for KEMSA, if KEMSA was properly managed, if we managed to get rid of the cabal, say, that maybe have taken stronghold of KEMSA, and it was properly managed, then you're talking about everything being of benefit. You know for sure that the medicine that has been procured or the medical equipment that has been procured meets such standard, that it's being brought, because of, what do you call it?
Economies of scale.
Economies of scale.
Yes.
So therefore it's valuable.
It's reasonably priced, yes.
It's value for money and all those things. It makes, what's the sense of West Pokot County trying to procure medicine? Malaria tablets from I don't know who, floating tenders. It's going to be more expensive. And then the neighboring county, Wasingishu, is doing the same. The neighboring county, Baringo, is doing the same. Why?
When you can actually have it done through one place. The problem is that I think the responsibility then of checking what has gone wrong with KEMSA and then trying to clean up the rot that is there is a responsibility that nobody wants to take on at this point, as opposed to taking the entire KEMSA and getting rid of it, because that's what you would do. If you say that counties then should buy on their own, you take away the legs, right, from this authority. That's what you do. You cripple it.
All this sounds good if only one could believe that what these politicians say
It's true.
is said in sincerity. It is not. It's not.
They
Because
basically just want a hand in the...
yes, they're saying, look, can we devolve what's happening in KEMSA, please?
And let's just now
Those
do
people-
it on a smaller scale.
Can we just
Can we
continue
devolve
this
the rot?
devolution and devolve this thing nicely?
Devolve this nonsense that's going
Those,
on at KEMSA.
yes.
And do it at the county level as well.
Like, for instance, the equipment buying program. Okay, we got these things which we didn't need, but can we at least just get them for ourselves even if we don't need them? We don't want, since they say we don't want somebody else getting for us what we don't need.
Yeah.
We want to get for ourselves what we don't
Can we
need.
list directly? Can we be the ones that sign such deals?
But isn't
Yes.
this a mess, guys?
Oh, no.
I mean,
You raised something here, Nduh, when you mentioned getting rid of the rot. You can get rid of the rot if you want.
if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to, if you wanted things to flow in a seamless manner, if you wanted things to be done the right way, you can actually do it. It sounds like things of it sounds like things of heaven, but it actually can be done here on earth.
Remember, the narrative is it's been made to appear as though it's the most difficult thing
On earth.
Phrase like grand corruption fights back.
Yeah.
Of course it does. So what? It's just corruption.
This is one, the health and the health sector corruption is one that has never been touched. Take me back to any case that's in court that involves or revolves around healthcare.
Has it been resolved?
We have
Nope.
issues about land, court. When there's an issue about land,
Court.
straight court. President calls a press conference, says 500 million acres of land was being stolen in Lamu, and this is what we're going to do. We see that going to court. Healthcare.
Court.
No. There is no case in court.
There's no case. They just discuss
Precisely.
it and then
There
it
is
disappears under
absolutely
the
no.
radar.
We talk about the other day, we were talking about the billions that were lost in the health ministry.
Court.
No case in court. You do not hear of any arrest. NYS, small matter of NYS comes up. The next thing, people are arrested. There's raids in people's homes. It's public matter. People are paraded in court. Health. Have you heard of any Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Power? Have you heard of anyone whose home was raided at 4 a.m. because they were involved in some Afia house or procurement?
Not from the ministry. I mean, you hear of the
Yes, what
you hear
we
from
hear
the
is-
agencies, NHIF.
What we hear is
Just NHIF.
Yeah.
they're transferred.
Yeah. Just NHIF and now KEMSA, the CEO suspended. But the corruption itself,
I had
that
never
these are
looked
the
at-
people.
Eric, I never looked at it that way because we even have a case where the people in charge of Treasury, CS,
Yes.
Principal Secretary, arrested,
Arrested.
out.
Public glare. Cameras are there at 5 a.m. as sleuths coming in and they, arresting this person. And throwing things up in the air, as they search for things in the house. Healthcare. Have you heard any?
I had never.
And you
actually
say
considered
that
that
this
no.
particular individual, this company is associated with this and the other, and they procured or they were involved in some funny and shoddy deals
Nope.
in the health sector? No. So when you talk about health, we are dealing with health.
Remember
Forget
how
it.
Even the mess scandal is still in the throes of Parliament.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just in
yes.
Parliament.
But
Hasn't gone beyond Parliament.
didn't we have a former CS disowning it and say, me, I was the CS, but I didn't know. Even I
didn't
was
know what was
asking
going
them
on.
till you wonder, hey, what on earth are we listening to here? You're the CS, and you've already presented yourself as this helpless person who didn't know and didn't understand.
Yep.
Then another CS comes in. You're right. The scandal comes in. It's unresolved. The person is transferred. You have somebody else.
Yeah. But the people themselves, those that they are called the mafia that operate within the corridors of Afi House, none has ever been arrested. No private individual, no company has ever been cited as this particular company. The directors of this company were involved in these shoddy deals with Afi House, and therefore that's why you're finding them in court. Shoddy companies, shoddy directors, NYS, many. The Nkiritas are sitting there wondering now,
actually,
tulikula
no.
pusi ya nani? Afi House, zero.
When you mention it, even DOD, we get mentioned
Yes.
and we know. So, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to be security.
Security.
So you don't go around talking about it. Health,
Nobody.
nothing. So is it cartels or is it a cartel?
It's a cartel.
And in this case, one should ask, who is the cartel? Because when it comes to such things,
Untouchable cartel.
yes, who?
Or somebody's twisting something somewhere. This is somebody that cannot be touched. That has to be the question that's
Oh
being
yeah,
asked.
you guys will
Somebody,
come.
you
Mutahi
make
Kaka
noise,
will
all the noise you
and
want
say,
to
you know,
make,
let me tell you, in this house here, in this house,
here.
behind
And no
here,
coin will go unaccounted
yes,
for. Uncle, well done.
nothing,
Enter Jack Ma.
nothing.
And exit Giacomo.
Yeah,
We laugh because it's just a way to diffuse the pressure and the tension that you feel when you talk about these things, right? But the seriousness, okay, no.
Anyway, as we conclude the hour, the cabinet is on leave, is it? Recess, yeah?
For 14 days.
Working recess,
Yes.
working leave.
For
All
14
right.
days.
So when it came out initially, there was all this word going around. Okay, so the president has basically just disbanded his cabinet and told them, "You guys go home. I'll call you when I need you, if I need you."
Oh, wow.
The secretary to the cabinet sent head of public service released a statement yesterday explaining, okay, no.
Calm down,
What we're
everybody.
saying is that they're not going to be meeting because they're supposed to be meeting every Tuesday and Thursday, but they'll be going around the country inspecting government projects. Just don't forget that last month the president had issued a directive
Saying nobody's
telling
traveling anywhere.
especially ministers,
Yeah.
don't go anywhere. Now they've been told, don't meet, go.
Just travel. It's like
Where
the
they
feet are
smoke.
facing forward and the head facing the other way.
The uniqueness about
You're going
this,
that way.
even if, the newspapers report that even in 2017 something similar happened, but similar in that maybe the CSs and the principal secretaries went on leave. But the political musical chairs were not what they are now. Where you have this party and that party and that party playing housewarming games. Okay? That hadn't happened yet. And with the housewarming games, the pointer seems to be housewarming in that you want to replace some of the employees in this house. Because that's what seems to be it.
Yeah.
Yes. You can't have an agreement or you can't have an MOU without understanding what you are gaining or getting for your party.
Yeah.
So they have reason to worry.
All of them, including the CASs.
They have reason to worry.
Okay. We are coming to the top of the hour from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We'll also be live on KTN Home. As we do that, CT, remind us today's proverb
Today's proverb.
and make the call again to the
Well,
audience.
the call was actually responded to because a gentleman by the name of Wasike actually came up with something particularly interesting. He said that the closest translation you could have to what the proverb mentioned was yakija yapoke. Okay? And the equivalent in Kiswahili is when a man is coming or when a person is coming towards you, you need not say, come here.
When a person is coming towards you, you need not say come here.
Yes. Why are you beckoning them forth when they're already heading?
They're already coming.
They're already heading forth. So, Mr. Wasike, thank you.
Yakija yapokee.
Yes.
Any other translation that you may have in your language or in Swahili or in English, just let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's where you can tweet. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so has it changed? So far, so good. We're not looking at any crazy traffic situations in the city this morning. Let's take a quick look outside of Nairobi and in Mombasa. It looks pretty good. Slow wake up to the morning, and getting into the town will not be too terrible as we see it now. Skip over to Kisumu, and well, before we get to Kisumu, looking to Eldoret, not too much traffic. Nakuru in and outbound, vehicles are it's piling up a little bit, but it won't be too crazy from what we see so far. All right, then in Kisumu, in and out of the city as well, not too crazy. I guess that's what we'll be using to describe a lot of traffic right now. We'll see how it gets as we go along. Coming back into the city, a little bit of a hold up, then at the SGR on Mombasa Road, and then out towards the turnoff to the JKIA, and then through towards Cabanas. Normal Monday morning traffic. Out inbound from Thika Road also, it's piling up as we see it. We'll take a look in about half an hour and see how that may change. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's know what you see and let's keep it moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room right here on Spice FM. Spice FM broadcasts in Nairobi on 94.4. We are in Malindi on 97.7. In Njeri, 90.9. Eldoret, 96.7. 96.0 in Nakuru, 102.5. Kisumu. Mombasa, 87.9. We also stream this show live on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. And for the next 2 hours, we are also live on KTN Home. And I'd like to say a very good morning to our audience on KTN Home in the room. C.T. Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Eric Latiff. Let's talk about going back to the skies for Kenya Airways. Last week, we spoke to the chairman of the Kenya Airline Pilots Association, KALPA, and he was telling us what they think about the revival of Kenya Airways. First of all, right off the blocks, they said they support the proposed nationalization of the airline. And then they say this is the time. If you look at what's happening around the world, airlines were seriously affected by COVID-19. Many of them have had to basically just stop their operations completely, like Air Mauritius. Others, like South African Airways, decided, you know what, we were big, we are now going to become very small. Mm-hmm. Others have had to many airlines have had to lay off staff, including the big ones, the British Airways and the rest have had to lay off very many of their members of staff. Back home, Kenya Airways decided, you know what, we also need to do something. We have not made a shilling since this pandemic began, because we haven't been to the skies. And even in those cases where we've been to the skies, taking flowers, for example, or other commodities to the export markets, we still haven't made enough money to sustain our operations. So we need to do something about this. which among the things that we need to do is cut back costs, become lean, even reduce our operations and where we are operating from. The pilots were not happy about this. They were saying this is the opportunity where you need to inject more money so that you can take advantage of everybody else who is down on their knees. Go and capture their market and operate from there. It's a big debate.
It's an interesting debate. Remember, when it comes to the transportation of cargo, if you look at what happened, say, for instance, with Ethiopian Airlines and with their work within even our own boundaries, you'll find that this argument actually has traction because it's like it found them ready. Remember, cargo was moving. It's human beings who were not moving.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyone who had sufficient cargo planes or was primed to be able to move cargo around, then that person still had work.
They were able to.
Oh, yes, they were able to. I mean, the cargo business did not stop even with COVID. It never stopped. It may have increased now because maybe they've opened up sectors for other sectors for business, but it never actually closed. So if you use that argument, yes, the cargo business, I think, already shone a light in that direction to show that, yes, that argument is not without merit.
But the human transportation, that one took a serious hit. And even in the big airlines, like you're saying,
Massive.
if you talk about the airlines in Europe, in America, all of them have basically just said, look, it has been seriously tough. It doesn't matter whether they have proper cargo operations operating, but it's just a percentage of their incomes. So they were really affected by this.
Yes, they were.
So let's speak to the CEO of Kenya Airways, and this is Alan Kilavuka. Alan, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you, Sana. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
So, Alan, we are talking about what the airlines globally have suffered, and Kenya Airways is not left out, obviously. And now there's a plan that you have with your management and the board to, let's say, revive Kenya Airways, bring it back to profitability. Let's start with what you have in plan now, post-COVID. What is it that you've planned to do?
Yes, thank you. So, Eric, thank you, first of all, for inviting me this morning to just clarify a few things and also to let the nation know what's going on, what we're doing, how we're faring. So, as everybody knows, Kenya Airways has been going through a very rough time over the last 7 years because of different things. And then early this year, in March, when we stopped flying, when there was a cessation of movement in Kenya and in many parts of the world, and COVID kicked in, we stopped transporting, particularly passengers. This situation became much worse. So what we did is, what happened is our business dropped by around about 90% from that point onwards for the last 5 or so months. And we did indeed continue flying cargo to various destinations. But remember, cargo is also carried on the belly of the aircraft. Okay, so on top of just the normal cargo flights, we also had a reduced cargo capacity. We also continued flying the evacuation flights, evacuating people and also bringing back Kenyans from different places who are stranded in different places. But the point is that we dropped the business by 90%. And the issue here is when we focus for the next 2 or 3 years, we see that this trend will continue. Of course, the numbers will improve, but even judging from what we're seeing so far, since we started flying, the numbers are not much better than they were before. So what we have to do, therefore, is to look at our operations, look at the network, look at the assets that we have, and then make sure that these things are fit for purpose. In other words, we don't have too big an operation that we cannot afford to run for the next 2 or 3 years.
Is that what the problem was before, Alan?
No. The problem before was different. And it was only compounded and made worse by COVID. Yeah, so that's where we are. So what we are focusing on right now, going forward, is how do we make sure that the organization that we carry going forward is able to respond to the suppressed demand that we see in the marketplace? This year alone, we were projecting something like between 40 and 50%. So far, we are seeing something like 30%. And we think that these numbers are going to persist, like I said, for the next 2 years. Next year, we think it will probably go up between, let's say, 50%-ish. And then 2022, given the elections, it's going to still stay at 50%. And then we'll see a rebound in 2023, maybe 2024. That's what we are seeing. And this is not unique to Kenya. It's across the world. The data supports this from IATA, from the World Bank, and from many other sources.
So, Alan, I have to come back and ask, with Kenya Airways, even as you have said a few minutes ago, is that Kenya Airways was already suffering from a problem. There was whether it was hemorrhaging of a right way to do things, for example, there was already a problem before COVID set in. What is the guarantee then? Because you're saying that, over the next couple of years, there will be an increase in passengers, for example. However, coming off the fact that there was already a problem at Kenya Airways, right? And you're saying that we'll be able to get things back on track, but that's assuming that everything is at status quo. Now, what guarantees do you have to show that, everything will be all right, and then with the disappearance of COVID, you'll be on track?
Yeah, so the issue here is, okay, first of all, there's no business that can guarantee anything, right? Especially in these times when you see things like COVID happening. Nobody knew COVID was going to be there, so there's no guarantees for anything at all. But what there's a guarantee of one thing is that we need to make the right decisions today for the long-term sustainability of the business tomorrow. So what has been plaguing Kenya Airways has to do with poor liquidity, our highly leveraged position, high comparative costs. There are some contracts which are very rigid, which we need to work on, including some of the costs, some of the contracts that we have with the unions. There are also some internal inefficiencies that we need to work on. And then one of the other ones is just the over-reliance that we have on our passenger revenue business. So all those things are, yes, working against the airline, and there have been many attempts to address them in different ways. Now, what we're saying today is these issues that we are facing, this one that I've just enumerated, have been made significantly worse. Okay, so there is no way you can address them with the current size of the operation. And that's why you have to right-size it, so that first of all, you have a smaller issue that you can respond to. Yeah. And also the market, you see, listen, the problem here is there is absolutely no market. I've heard arguments saying that we should expand. Now, expanding where there's no market to expand to means that you're investing. Okay, so it means that you need to have a war chest to invest in a non-existing market and try and create that market, which calls for a lot of money. I think I have said it before, but running an airline is no joke. Our payroll cost alone, is 1.2 billion a month. 1.2 billion a month. So that's only payroll, and other things added together. It's not a cheap thing to run. So if you want to invest in sustaining an existing operation, it will cost you tons of, actually billions of dollars for the next 3 years. And then you may not be able to recoup all that money. So our strategy here is shrink so that you can respond to the market that you have, the demand that's there, and then you subsequently grow from that point on.
When you say shrink, what exactly do you mean?
Okay, shrink is basically on the operations that we have, the network that we are looking at, the assets that we have, and the staff.
All right, so
That's what we call by shrink.
Staff will be pretty obvious, and we'll discuss that a bit later. Let's start with the network and the other operations and the assets. Does this mean that you need to sell off some of the planes that you have, or stop flying to some routes?
Yes. So let's start with the network, because that's where it starts. Okay. So because an airline is built around a network. So what we have done is to look at our entire network. We've looked at the high potential routes. Those ones we will keep. we've looked at routes that will take much longer to recover. And for some of those routes, we have suspended. Some of them indefinitely, some for a period of time. Then we have looked at also the existing routes that we fly to. And based on demand, we have reduced the frequencies. That's why I was saying earlier, we are only flying about 30% of our current network. Okay, and in fact, even that 30%, the load factor, what we call load factor, in other words, the number of people flying on the plane, is still quite low compared to before. So based on that network, therefore, you look at the type of operations that you're running, the assets, like you said, the planes that you have, and you don't need all these planes. So what we have done is we've looked at the type of aircraft that you're flying, and we've determined which ones that we think we need in the short to medium term for the next 3 years. And what we've done is we've gone back to the lessors of the people who own the aircraft, and said, because of what has happened to us, could you take back this aircraft? And of course, they're not happy to do that because everybody else in the world is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So they will have a glut of aircraft sitting in their yard. So it's a tough discussion to have with them because there are penalty clauses also to return an aircraft early. But the alternatives we have is keeping the aircraft here and keeping it on ground because there's not enough demand to fly the aircraft.
And still paying for it.
And still pay for it. So that is a tough discussion we're having right now. We also are looking
at how many planes do you see letting go of?
First of all, what's the size of our fleet?
So we have the total fleet is, including jumbo jet, is about 46. Kenya Airways alone is the passenger aircraft is 34. Then we have 2 freighters. So depending on the negotiations, Erica, this is a very tough and delicate discussion. So I'm sure some of the lessors will be listening to this very keenly. So depending on the negotiations that we have with the lessors, the idea is to reduce the fleet ownership cost because it's quite high. And to reduce the fleet ownership cost, you have to negotiate with these lessors. Either they have to allow us, if they insist to keep the aircraft, then we have to change the contract so that we pay them as we fly the aircraft and not a rental number, not a rental figure. And depending on that discussion, if they agree to that kind of an arrangement, then we can keep some of the aircraft. If they don't, then we have a difficult discussion of saying, please take back your aircraft. And that could be anything up to 10 of them.
So I hear you saying that in the beginning, when these agreements were made, it was that, of course, it being in a rental state, is that you're going to be paying whether these aircraft are grounded or whether they're in the skies.
Yeah, I mean, that is the normal way to do. What you do is when you leave an aircraft, you pay for an monthly. Yeah.
All right. So now looking at the current situation and looking how you want to go forward, I mean, obviously, before you go into any kind of negotiation, you maybe have an idea of how things would go. Can we ask what it looks like now? If you're going to have that conversation, does it look like something that you would be able to do? Because one of the major things I know that you're dealing with at Kenya Airways is cost cutting. And this would be a major thing that would be contributory to that. Is it a possibility from where you see it now?
It has to be, because, fleet ownership, so running an airline in itself is very expensive, like you said, so we have to cut the costs. But the fleet, the cost of the fleet is one of the more expensive fixed costs that we have. Okay, so it's probably something like 50% of the fixed cost.
Is this something normal in this industry?
Yes, this is normal in the industry.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would say maybe, should I say, the advantage, the upper hand that we have here is that we are not the only ones asking for this kind of moratorium, renegotiating terms. We're not the only ones. Everybody around the world is doing the same thing. So it's not a new thing that they're hearing. Of course, they don't like it, and of course, they will push back, and of course, they will say, this is contractual, and therefore, we'll abide by the contract. But we are thinking about different interesting discussions that we're having there. For example, we need to expand the cargo space that we have. Okay? And so for some of them, the ones that we need to do, we're saying to them, why don't you take some of your aircraft, the kind of the older ones, and convert them into freighters at your cost, of course. And so that's a discussion that's ongoing. Now, it's not a very interesting discussion for them because they typically they have a higher rental figure for a passenger aircraft compared to
a freighter.
To freighters. Okay, so they are happier to have it as a passenger. But what we're saying to them is we need freighters today. So if I was to talk about freighters for a second. So Kenya Airways today does not have wide-body freighters. In other words, long-range aircraft to carry cargo, which traditionally what has happened for Kenya Airways is that we carry cargo on the belly of the aircraft. So if you're flying to London, you carry it in the belly, and that's so, for example, flowers and fruits and vegetables and so on, you carry it in the belly. And then if you're going to China, same thing, US, and so on and so forth. Now, what we are seeing is that there is a huge demand for cargo, particularly because there's less passenger aircraft and also because today, there's need for movement of goods a lot more than we were seeing before. So there's a ramp up in demand. So indeed, it is true that we do need a wide body freighter today. So if we were to get a wide body freighter today, that would be very good for us. But what we need to do, we would need to finance it. That is a secondary problem. The primary problem is to even get a freighter in the first place, right? Because everybody else in the world, as you'd imagine, is also looking for wide-body freighters. And so they are not there in the market as we speak. In fact, we were checking some of the wide-body freighters that we would be interested in. We were seeing that the earliest one we can get is 2023, which is a little bit out there. So we now try and solve the problem by looking at our wide bodies. Our wide bodies are the 787s, the Dreamliners, the Boeing 787s, the big ones. So we want to, because we don't need all of them, because there are too many of them. So we, for the time being. So what we have now done is to discuss with, for the ones that are owned by the lessors, to see whether we could convert them and remove the seats so that we can convert those to cargo, and they can increase the capacity of cargo. What we are currently doing is that we're using them with a seat on, which takes out something like 10 tons from the capacity. So if you remove the seat, then you increase the tonnage by 10 tons.
Yeah.
So if you can do that with two of our aircraft, then again we can find use for at least two of our cargo aircraft.
Alan, is there an opportunity presented here to look at a different way of doing business? Because, I mean, like you say, things happening around the world, taking on a particular form or fashion, is the new normal, is what is being asked. Is this an opportunity to look at maybe less passenger-reliant travel for this airline?
In fact, you're spot on. That's exactly what we have to do for the time being. So because of the patterns that we are seeing today, okay, if you look at the main categories of our demand, people who fly us, you find that a large majority of them are business people flying from place to place. Another category would be tourists. Another category would be people visiting friends and relatives. So those are the three key categories. Of course, there could be some here and there, but those are the three key ones. The ones that are the highest premium of them is the business traveler. According to our projections, according to IATA and many of the economists, we see that this business traveler will therefore have decided that they would like to spend. First of all, there's a lot of businesses have frozen business travel. And a lot of them are saying, why not use virtual meetings? Why not postpone non-essential travel, and so on and so forth. So a lot of that has gone down. Of course, many businesses are also saying they want to reduce their costs. And one of the first things they do is they look at the travel costs, and that's what is impacted. So in that sense, and that's what is contributing to the demand drop.
But do you see this demand coming back up? I mean, in terms of passenger travel, I want you to answer this question when you come out of this short commercial break, so as you can tell us whether what you're seeing now in terms of there's higher demand for cargo as opposed to passenger, if we adopt a strategy that just addresses this, is this a long-term strategy or is this just a medium-term strategy or short to medium-term strategy? And then you shall revert to the strategy to basically deal with all your passenger demand. We are speaking with Alan Kilavuka. He is a Group MD and CEO of Kenya Airways. We are talking about bringing Kenya Airways back to profitability and the strategy that the management and the board are deploying towards this. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation at 25 minutes past 7. Let's take a short break. We'll be back right here on Spice FM and KTN Home.
The weather with Spice FM.
It's overcast in Nairobi at 14 degrees this morning. We're looking at a high of 23 and a chance of showers later on. It's also touted to be a wet afternoon in Njeri with highs of 21 and lows of 13. The rains are going to come down in Nakuru later with highs of 24 and lows of 13. Clear skies in Eldoret this morning will herald rain showers later and into thunderstorms with highs of 20 and lows of 12. It's 19 degrees and partly cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 28 and lows of 19 with a wet afternoon in store. It's going to be the same in Kakamega with highs of 24 and lows of 16. It's partly cloudy in Kakamega at 17. 24 degrees in Malindi and mostly cloudy this morning, highs of 28 and lows of 23 through the day. Showers expected later. Showers are also expected in Mombasa with highs of 28 and lows of 23. Mostly cloudy conditions at the moment. It's partly cloudy in Kampala at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18 with showers expected later. Dar es Salaam is a foggy morning at 23. We'll see highs of 29 and lows of 22 and 4 degrees in Johannesburg this morning. Clear skies and sunny conditions, however, with highs of 19 and lows of 3. And finally, for now, in Lagos, it's a cloudy morning at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, nasty accident at Exterior Junction this morning already, and that's going to affect traffic all the way down towards then eventually Langata Road, guys. It was really bad, and we are waiting to see if emergency services will get there. A few police on the road already to try and sort that particular issue out. Gong Road, however, is flowing very smoothly this morning. Travel safe, however, and I know there's a temptation to go a lot faster now that the roads are clear. But please be careful. Mombasa Road is moving along ever so slowly, not bumper to bumper just yet. It might get there in a short while, but we want to be aware of what's going on. Coming into the city from Thika Road, not too bad. As you get to the underpass at Pangani, you'll be fine getting into the Globe Cinema roundabout and then into the CBD from there. It's looking good coming out of Westlands as well. So it's not too crazy this Monday morning. Let's hope it doesn't get manic. We'll check it out in a bit. Let us know also what you see. Spice of MKE, and that's on Twitter.
Spice and everything Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
29
FM.
Minutes after 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Joining us on the line this morning is Kenya Airways Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer Alan Kilavuka. We are talking about reviving Kenya Airways. Before we went to the break, Alan had told us about the strategy that they have, which is shrink and then you'll be able to operate now and grow back in the future. And Alan, you talked about looking at your network, looking at the fleet that you have and the size of the fleet, and renegotiating some of these deals that you have. Let's now come to the big one, which is the number of staff, the employees. You are planning to lay off quite a number. Let's start with, how many staff does Kenya Airways employ?
Okay, so Eric, we have 4,600 odd employees, and this is across the world. Because we are an international company, so we have them in our outstations, we have them in Mombasa, Kisumu, and in Nairobi. So we have about 4,800. 4,600. Yeah, employees, yeah.
And then of this, how many do you hope to let go of in this immediate strategy?
Okay, so there are two. So before I just answer that, because I always like to have a logical discussion before getting to the number, so that it's clearly understood what's happening here. So first of all, in airline, there are two things that are critical. One is the complexity of the business. The other one is the fact that you have a very high capital-intensive business and also a very high labor-intensive business. In other words, both labor and capital are extremely expensive in airline. So when you're impacting, when you're trying to right-size the organization, you have to impact both of them, and that's why I went into great lengths to try and explain the fact that we are reducing our assets to respond to demand, and therefore, of course, now coming to labor, we do exactly the same thing. There are the three key principles that we are looking at when it comes to labor. So first of all is to make sure that all the actions that we're going to undertake during this process will be done in a transparent, dignified, and fair manner. Secondly is to follow a principle where it's not only fair, but it is auditable. There's integrity in the process. And then there's clarity for all the actions that we take. We also try and make sure that we have meaningful engagement with our staff, our social partners, and other stakeholders.
Yeah.
So we've been following those principles, and that's why we are going methodically from one step to another. Eric, this is a very difficult process for us to undertake because, KQ, first of all, spends a lot of money training their staff. So it's not an easy decision to ask some of them to leave for whatever reason. Okay, so of the 4,600, we had some who we had let go earlier, about 650. Okay, and now we have another 590 who we also want to release. So the total number is about 1,400. But the number that we are looking at is the minimum amount of employees that we would like to release, because in the end, even these people who are releasing, what we are telling them, and we're completely sincere about this, is they will be first in line to bring them back into the organization when we need them to come back. We do estimate that the business is dropping by 50%, but we don't want to impact employees for more than 40%. So in other words, we just keep as many people as we possibly can to run the operations that we see will be able to run with the number of staff that we keep.
I'd like to take you back to the subject of cargo. When you say that the demand for cargo has risen, by what percentage has it risen compared to the pre-COVID period and now that we are in the COVID period?
Yeah. So cargo business, so first of all, Kenya Airways as an airline has only about 10% of the cargo business, and that is something that we're working on, 10% of the business of cargo coming out of JKIA. So we have two things. One is what you said is expansion of the cargo demand. And it's difficult to say this because we had a reduced capacity. So it's difficult to understand whether the increase in cargo demand is because of increase in cargo demand or is because of the decrease in capacity. But what we do know is that we have 10% of the business here in JKIA. What we want to do is to expand that, to increase our market size in our home market here. And that's why we're working on getting extra capacity.
Let me understand you. You're saying that of the cargo business that emanates from JKIA, we as Kenya Airways, a local airline, only have 10% of that business.
Yes.
How did we let that happen?
Because we are a free market, right? JKIA is a free market. So we have all these airlines coming into the country. Remember that we have airlines, some of these big carriers who bring 777s, whose belly is able to carry anything up to 30 tons, okay? And they're coming every day. Some of them are going to Eldoret. We have big freighters coming from Europe as well, doing the same thing. And remember what I told you is that we don't have a freighter at Kenya Airways. We don't have a wide-body freighter.
Not to make too fine a point of this, but it appears that somewhere along the line, our planning didn't really take into account some of these matters, because if other people were doing it, it clearly means the business existed. And we clearly did not get into it, which brings me to my second question. Of the business that we do for ferrying passengers, what percentage of this business does local transportation of human beings comprise?
Local transportation, you mean domestic travel?
Yeah, domestic travel. Yeah, that's what it's called, domestic travel, yes.
You mean Mombasa and Kisumu?
Mombasa, Kisumu, domestic, Kenya. I'm not even going to East Africa, Kenya.
Yeah, so that is, of our passengers, it's about 10% or so.
And regional?
That's not much.
Okay, and regional?
Regional would
East
be
Africa.
Probably, yeah, East Africa would probably be, if I give, it's probably something like 30% or so of the business.
Okay.
And then if you look at Africa-wide, that's about 50% of the business.
Okay. I'm looking at how a lot of companies around the world and even countries have been able to kind of get themselves out of a situation that seemed dire. And a lot of this was through partnerships. There have been partnerships between government and private sector, PPPs and things like that. Is a partnership something that Kenya Airways would be looking into to be able to get itself moving? And as you think about that, we had conversations with the CS and the Ministry of Tourism, and this seems to be one of the ways in which you can get things off the ground. Is it something that Kenya Airways is forward-looking into or forward-thinking towards?
Yes. So as you might know, we do have an existing partnership with KLM and Air France. What we now are working on is to look at partnerships locally with local airlines. So we're having discussions with the airlines that are here who are also going through a similar challenge, so that we can build a proper network. Because sometimes expansion is not always by increasing your assets or expanding your network, but it's also expanding your partnerships. So right now we are in the middle of discussions with, it's not yet public, so we are in the middle of discussions with certain airlines to see how we can partner, and that will build a bigger network with those airlines.
Do you have
and help us?
Do you have an existing partnership with the hospitality industry?
We do have something we call KQ Travel, and with that way, yes, we do have KQ Holidays. Sorry, actually, KQ Holidays. I mean, the KQ Holidays do have partnerships with industry, with the tourism industry. And actually, we work very closely. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, no, please. I apologize. Please, you continue.
Yeah. Just we do work very closely with KTB. So when it comes to things like marketing abroad, we do joint marketing ventures, particularly into source markets like the US and to UK. And so apart from just having relationships with local tourist players, we also have a relationship with the body, with the Kenya Tourism Board.
I know you've mentioned on more than one occasion that the airline business is actually an expensive business, but around the world, we have airlines that are known to be, should we say, cheap airlines that don't charge as much. Is there a plan by Kenya Airways to increase its market share of local business, meaning make it a little more affordable for the locals?
Okay. And by local business, I'm assuming you mean domestic again, right?
By local business, you're right, I mean domestic.
Okay. You have to remember that Kenya Airways is a group where we have our local carrier called Jambojet. So between Jambojet and ourselves, we want to make sure that we're covering all the market segments. So Jambojet covering a certain market segment, and we also cover a certain market segment. But the overarching question, I think, Muga, you're asking is how do we make sure that we have a compelling pricing structure for our customers? I think that's maybe the overarching question.
You are spot on.
Yeah. So, and that is actually a valid and legitimate ask from our customers. So, to address that, what we have to do is to look at our cost base. Okay. And when we look at cost base, we talk about the fixed costs, not operating costs. How do you work on? I was trying to mention earlier the contracts that we have with our social partners and also the fleet owners and the stores, the other providers providing some of our digital assets. How do we renegotiate those contracts so that they are more palatable, so that we can overall reduce the cost and then pass these benefits to our customers? That's one aspect. The other aspect is just increase the efficiencies of how we operate in the airline, because we have identified some certain inefficiencies which we have been working on since the beginning of the year, so that we become more efficient and therefore more productive, and therefore, of course, we can pass that benefit to the consumer.
So let's talk back about this strategy, because what you do now, Alan, is going to determine whether this airline flies or it's basically grounded. We have seen other airlines in the continent being grounded, and when you talk about the restructuring, the right sizing, as you call it, of the airline and the strategy that you have in place, then there are those other naysayers, and these include the pilots and the the Kenya Airline Workers Union, who are saying that this is the wrong strategy because, like they argue, you cannot compete with Ethiopian, for instance, or other airlines in the region. They have mentioned Uganda, which is expanding, they say. And yet Kenya Airways is shrinking, and you still want to call yourself the pride of Africa. They say that this is the wrong strategy to take. What do you respond to that?
Yeah. And this is the alternative strategy that I have had people talk about, which I kind of mentioned in passing earlier, saying that we should expand. Okay. Now, expanding in a market that is shrinking is a strategy that is assuming that you have bottomless amounts of resources to be able to respond. Okay. So what we are just saying is actually quite simple. Is we want to respond to the market based on research. Okay. These other airlines, all airlines that I know of are shrinking. I think you mentioned, for example, Uganda.
Yep.
If you look at the fleet that Uganda has, the fleet, the only fleet that they're bringing in is the one that they had ordered earlier. Okay, so they're not expanding because of what is happening today. They are only taking the aircraft that they're already ordered and paid for, by the way.
Okay.
So it's not that they're expanding because they are seeing a gap in the market. Every airline that has studied the market has seen that there is a decline in demand, and therefore they respond by right-sizing the organization to meet that demand. Yeah. But if we decide today to expand, it will cost us a lot of money. And the money that will cost us between now and 2024, when we think the rebound will happen, will not justify it cannot be justified. We cannot justify it because we hope to recoup it by 2024. And like I mentioned to you earlier, in airline business, it is a very highly capital, labor-intensive business. It will cost us so much more money, and by the way, the taxpayers will pay for it. That it will not be tenable going forward. And we've seen these strategies in other airlines who have tried to do that, and they've come to a cropper.
You talked about increasing efficiencies as one of the strategies you had in place. How exactly do you plan to do this?
There are many ways of doing it. Operationally, for example, is how we do the in-flight service. Okay, how we the service providers that we use in different places to make sure that we leave on time, we depart on time, and we land on time, because those delays cost us a lot of money in terms of penalties in destination. The destination airports. They cost us a lot of money when it comes to stranded passengers when they are brought into the country, because we have to put them in hotels. We have to take care of them, give them meals. So all those inefficiencies, if they build them up, they cost us billions of shillings. So those are the kind of efficiencies that we want to bring in, or that we're bringing in, to make sure that we reduce the amount of wastage and leakage. Also, just even when it comes to the way we contract, how we negotiate our contracts, and so on, all those ones, are things that will help us to become more efficient and therefore cheaper.
If indeed the government takes over Kenya Airways, and if we casually just look at our papers, one of the things that always gets our attention is this very same matter of contracting. The focus has been in the Ministry of Health and with PPEs. So how will Kenya Airways, I know this is a political question I'm asking, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless. How would Kenya Airways expect to avoid this problem if indeed it becomes a government operation?
Yeah, this is a legitimate concern. When we were looking at the proposed bill, the Kenya Aviation Management Bill 2020, this is one of the things that we identified. So the attempt is to try and do two things: to put in a governance process that will help to protect the airlines from interference, okay, and do interference from outside. That is the one thing. The other thing as well is when it comes to contracting, for example, as you know, the state corporations and public entities use the Public Procurement Act to procure. Now, in aviation, it becomes a lot more difficult because because of the long process of procuring. And when it comes to things like aircraft being on ground, it needs a fast turnaround, a quick turnaround for you to procure some of the items. So in the bill, what is envisaged is that the airline, and actually indeed the entire group of operation, which is the KAA, the airline, and also the aviation investment company, is to come up with a policy that will help to strengthen the procurement integrity of all the three entities, and will be ratified by the council of that particular entity. So in that way, you do two things. One, you try and shorten or short-circuit the process. And also, secondly, you improve the governance of procurement and strengthen the integrity of the process.
So now, just looking at all of this as you make these plans and then moving forward and asking yourself, getting to a place where now business is viable, and now having taken to the skies, how is it looking? A few people, buying tickets, flying Kenya Airways now again, and going to a few countries. How is it looking vis-a-vis how it has been in the last few months?
Yeah, it's been a little bit interesting. We have a smaller, like you said, we have a smaller network. Mm-hmm. Now, we were hoping that this smaller network, when it comes to things like the load factor that we currently have, that the load factor would be something close to 65, hopefully 70%. On average, it's about 57%, so it's lower than we had projected. But what we want to do, I think one of the problems we currently have is that people need to gain a lot more confidence in just generally operating, flying. Mm-hmm. So the work that we have cut out for us right now is to convince the passengers that it's okay, it's safe to fly. We'll put in measures that will will help to reduce the risk of transmission of this virus. And that's what we're working on right now, to see how we can help stimulate the market and make passengers gain confidence in traveling once more.
As you're doing all this, you're getting a lot of course, support from some quarters, and there's a lot of pushback from other quarters, among them your stakeholders, including the pilots, whom we spoke to last week. And the pilots have really pushed back and said that, what the management is doing is it's what's going to bring this airline to the ground finally. How would you respond to all the concerns? I'm sure you even engaged with them. How would you respond to all the concerns that are being raised by the pilots?
Yeah, Eric, pilots are a legitimate part of the fraternity in Kenya Airways. We have 4,600 employees. Okay, so they have a right to say what they need to say, and we're listening. Okay, everybody has an opinion in this matter, and we've listened to the opinion. Now, based again on what we have seen in the marketplace, the research we've done, the trends we are seeing today, we are convinced that our strategy is the right strategy for the long-term sustainability of the airline. Social partners, or you should call them unions, their role is they have a role, and their role is to make sure that they are helping to retain as many jobs as possible. They also have a role to make sure that they improve the terms and conditions of service of their members, okay? And we respect that role. Our role as management and as part of their management, we also have a role to grow the airline, to make it sustainable for the long term. So if you look at the two roles don't conflict. It's just that the timing is not normally synchronized. So what we are saying today is our ambition is to make sure that JKIA continues and grows to become a premium hub for both passenger and goods. And we want Kenya Airways to play a central role in that. But for us to be able to do that, we have to take care of the issues that we have today, because we are looking long term.
Yeah.
I mean, the short term is, I keep saying, the lazy thing for us to do, Eric, is for us to sit back and just wait for the roof to fall on our heads. But we can't do that. That is irresponsible.
It would be, yes.
Yeah, it is irresponsible because in the end, it's the taxpayer who will pay for this.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have a duty and responsibility to our employees, to our shareholders, to the taxpayers, to make sure that this airline is sustainable in the long term.
So have you reached out to the unions and the association to have a conversation with them, to make them understand where you're coming from and also to hear where they're coming from?
Yes, we have had several engagements with them because it's a requirement by law to have those engagements, and we continue to have them. In fact, we have a discussion even tomorrow, and we'll continue having those engagements. But ultimately, those engagements need to come to some sort of an agreement so that we can move forward, because the longer it takes, it brings a lot of anxiety in the organization. There's a lot of, so we want to kill that anxiety and we want to move forward.
Assuming that the ultimate goal is to reduce this monthly payroll of 1.2 billion shillings a month, are you open to conversations where maybe the unions or the association, even the pilots, would take a pay cut just so that they can still, all of them, remain in office or at work, but earning less?
So we are open to discussions that will help to reduce the overall cost structure, but it has to make the company efficient. In other words, the employees will need to be productive. You cannot keep a big complement of staff if employees have nothing to do at the company, right? If you have 50% of work and then you have 100% of employees, it means that you have a large contingent of employees not working. Okay, so we need to have an agreement that will make that work, and also look at how can we. The easy thing, like I said, to do is just to leave it the way it is, and hope that something will change. But we can have an engagement that will make sense for both of them and us. But ultimately, the number of employees, we cannot keep a large contingent of employees who are not don't have enough work. Okay, that will not help the organization. It will be a very oversized organization, and it will be inefficient. And what we are looking out to come out with is a lean, efficient organization that will respond to our customers, and ultimately will give a return to our shareholders.
Alan Kilavuka, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning, and we wish you all the best as you continue these conversations with all the stakeholders and your plan to bring Kenya Airways back on its feet. Or is it back to the skies?
And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much for the engagement. I hope to come back soon.
Yes, we hope to have you again soon. Asante sana. Alan Kilavuka is a Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Airways. He's been telling us what the plans are for reviving this airline. We know that they are laying off some staff, around 1,400. They need to look at their network. They need to right size in terms of even the routes that they are operating in, the frequency of operations into those routes, even the size of the fleet. Good morning. It's 4 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Kenya Airways, right? I mean, looking at the kind of work that they have to do, the pressure, all eyes on you.
Sure. I would like to see something, though, where you have a beautiful mix between an airline that is, I mean, obviously struggling and is trying to do something to get itself back on its feet, or wings in this case, and a tourism sector which is also trying to bring more people into the country that also realizes the importance of domestic tourism. So wouldn't it be fantastic if you had a mix between an airline that needed more people in its cabins and tourists, a tourism sector that needed more people on the ground? And this spectrum could be taken from what you have available in terms of a Kenyan population. I would love to see a marriage like that.
I'd like to see a marriage that also includes a plan to ensure that the mistakes that were made in the past that landed them in the jam they were in long before COVID are not repeated again.
I think that's crucial.
That's where the focus should be.
Yes.
The corporate management, and this is where the board needs to really know that it has one job: to regain trust. The trust of the public, the trust of the investors, the trust of the government, and everybody who's involved in this airline business. You need to regain trust.
Yes.
Because we are at a point where whenever you hear Kenya Airways saying, we need some money, we need to think, again. But you can see there's some effort heading towards that. When they talk of someone like the way Alan is saying, this is something we must do and we've got to do.
You know that the situation that this gentleman finds himself in is a really unenviable one. It is difficult.
It's a tough one.
Because there are all these problems that were there before which were not resolved. Then the COVID brought about by COVID. Then now there's just the reality of the industry and what needs to be done. And with the reality of the resources you have,
tough one.
No, this is a tough one.
It's 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we will begin with today's proverb from CT Muga as we switch gears into another conversation. Good morning.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, eyes out of Nairobi
Traffic.
for now. There's a crazy traffic jam in Mombasa, Makupa Causeway, Kibrarani to Shell Changamwe. There's total chaos there this morning. Not sure quite right now what the cause of it is, but just if you're headed or leaving in that direction and you're stuck, so you understand, from Makupa Causeway to Kibarani and the Shell at the Shell in Changamwe in Mombasa, total chaos this morning. So if you're heading in that direction, you need to be aware of what lies ahead. All right, let's come back into Nairobi. We're on Mombasa Road. Yes, it has fallen into what we expect in terms of traffic this morning, all the way from the SGR, even before that in Mlolongo, and then towards the JKIA turnoff, and then towards Cabanas. That is bumper to bumper. There was a terrible accident at the Kiserian Junction this morning, and so that affects traffic all the way coming all the way down and then towards Langata Road, and it's snaking along then towards the Timor roundabout. So that's what we're facing this Monday morning. Outbound on Thika Road, also some traffic. Inbound, a lot more traffic as you're trying to get into the CBD via the Globe Cinema roundabout. So it's a manic Monday. We expected this to happen, so we have to now pepper all of this with a little bit of patience. Spice of MKE, let us know what you see. At least make it easier for one person to get through.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to
Good
start
morning,
your
and how
day.
are you wherever you are this very beautiful Monday morning, the 17th day of August 2020 at 3 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. Let's begin the hour with today's proverb, CT Muga.
When a person is coming towards you, you need not say, "Come here."
They're coming anyway.
That's the general idea. They were already heading in your direction. And it isn't as though words uttered by you will either forestall or will encourage their onward journey. They were heading in that direction anyway.
All right. And we're asking you to tell us if you have any close translation of this proverb in your local language, and let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Remember the one that we had gotten from Jeremiah Wasike, who had said, in Swahili, the closest he thinks of is yakija yapokee.
Yes. And we thank him for that.
Yakija yapokee. What is it that you'd think of closer to you or in Swahili or any other language? Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let's shift gears now and talk about COVID-19. We are fighting COVID-19 in this country. The country has received a lot of support, both internally and externally, to the fight against COVID-19. Internally, through this one fund called the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund, and then externally through various organs, okay, coming directly to the National Treasury as budgetary support from the multilateral lenders, coming from other support development partners like the European Union, pouring in money directly into communities to help in the fight against COVID-19, coming from individuals like Jack Ma and the Jack Ma Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, all those that have donated into this. Then, every now and then, we keep raising the question of, okay, is there accountability for this? Have we seen where this money has gone to? Have we seen where the donations that we've received in kind have gone to? Questions have been asked about the PPEs. Questions have been asked even about the hand sanitizers that were donated by the government itself, by making hand sanitizer to be distributed around the country. A story that was aired on NTV yesterday, COVID millionaires. It also looks at other stories that have been covered all over the media. Even on this particular show, we've asked these very, very same questions. Where is the money? Martha Karua, whom we spoke to last week, was asking the same question. So where is the money? Why is it that, we only have so many questions and not an equivalent number of answers?
Yeah, I know. It's exhausting when you think about it already, because you want to ask yourself and say, why is it that we continue to run around in this rat race and there seems to be no finish line? There seems to be no crossing where you can say, all right, this we left behind and we didn't have to deal with that drama before. So this money has not trickled in. This money has come in the droves. It has come. A lot of money has come in. Money that would be able to tilt an economy in a very positive way. In leaps and bounds, you would have been able to do a lot more with it. But I would like to stay away from the sensationalism of billions of shillings having disappeared and go to the nitty-gritty, which I believe everybody should be asking. Who was responsible for what? When money came in, when donations came in, who was supposed to be the custodians of this thing and make sure that they actually reached the adequate place? So that if in fact something was circumvented or somebody came with this brilliant plan for circumvention, who was the person that opened the door, or rather who was the person that left the key for somebody to then be able to come and pick it up and open and do whatever they needed to do? Because then if we don't have any kind of accountability, this thing is nothing is going to happen. We're going to hear the song and dance, horse and pony shows. What is it? Dog and horse, pony and dog show. One of those animals.
You pick
it's
them.
just anyone you
just
like.
keep mentioning them, so that you give people the options.
Canary and chicken. Let's go.
That's it. Yes.
Canary and
how
chicken.
they like to mix and match.
Yes.
It's dog and pony.
Dog and
actually.
pony
Yes.
is what I was looking for. It's just going to continue. So we're just going to be, it'll be 1 billion today, it'll be 10 billion tomorrow, because guess what? COVID will come and go. Then there'll be something else next year. And an opportunity will present itself for somebody else to steal. Okay? Because we want to...
You're operating on the premise that it's been stolen.
Call it what you want to do. Dress it up.
Now, if you wanted to
Dress
get
it
into the nitty-gritties, do you have the nitty-gritty that actually shows that this was stolen?
No. If you want to say that money came in, right, and you can't see evidence of how it was used.
And it doesn't exist.
And it doesn't... That thing that
What
you're
doesn't
saying,
exist?
the money was
The
supposed
money-
to be done...
That money. Though
The money's
that-
not there. The thing that it was supposed to have done, you can't see evidence of such. What do you then?
Though the Treasury would disagree with you. 'Cause
Yeah.
last week, the Treasury was reported to have said that actually speaking, this money actually hasn't been used. You know, what makes this discussion, in my opinion, potent is because already if we look at what the figures at Oxfam and World Bank have actually put out, they said worst case scenario with this COVID thing, close to 500 million people will end up in poverty. People who were previously not poor. And the poverty line, according to them, is people who earn less than $5.5 a day. Okay? That's the poverty line. And they say that is where we're headed. Now, when you read about monies that have come in, and Eric, you asked the question, so let me try and answer it. The PPEs that supposedly came in and all the other equipment that was supposed to help us in this fight, normally in this country, when such things are given, there's a big song and dance when they're being handed over. Huge pictures, what have you. Have you seen any pictures of those things being handed over? The answer is no. What we've read of, though, is our local capacity being revamped, increased, expanded. Now, when there is so much silence about the direction and the manner in which something which was so clearly given to us, where it landed or where it ended up, then one has absolute license to let the imagination go wild as to what could have happened.
Especially also added to that, the absence of any kind of an explanation hitherto. Nobody says very clearly, okay, this is what you have clear, that this is what it was used for. And so you don't leave rooms for speculation. But if in the absence of that, anybody's able to guess or imagine whatever they want at this point.
You also get the impression that there are people who are supposed to be in charge of this entire operation who don't seem to think or feel the need to explain anything to anybody. It came in, there's no explanation. And what about the explanation? There's no explanation. And that's the end of that particular story. So, one cannot be blamed if they let the imagination go completely wild on this particular matter. But it isn't really wild. That particular ministry, unfortunately, has been bedeviled by scandals of enormous proportions over the years. And a lot of that has had to do with monies that have come into that ministry from friendly donors to help us with various problems at various times. And yet the money has gone, and no less an institution than the Auditor General's office are the ones who came up with some of the huge figures like 5 billion. Now, the Auditor General's query, it was an audit query, 5 billion had been spent. But on what specifically seemed to have been an issue. So we have the same issue now again. A donation was given. We know it arrived in this, yes. We know other donations have been given. But every time you ask for a specific account of how this money has been used, even when the money was taken to counties by our government, and these same questions were asked, in some counties you'd be told who actually procured it. In some you'd be told amounts. In others there'd be gaps. But the truth is, there was a lot of gray areas in this matter of monies that were supposed to be spent on COVID-related issues.
Our very own Dr. Mercy Korir, she's KTN's medical journalist and the group's medical editor, joins us on the line. Mercy, you have covered this story. You have gone to the press conferences, addressed by the CSs, even addressed by the PS and the CSs, and you've asked these questions. And what kind of answers have you been getting?
Well, and luckily you guys have been witnesses that we have been getting short stories, what I call short stories.
Yeah.
You know, answers that are neither here nor there. Because I remember at the very beginning when we were covering this, and immediately after the World Bank approved about 50 million Kenya shillings, 50 million US dollars, which is about 5 billion, to go into the COVID response, where 1 billion of that was supposed to go into the blood crisis, and 4 billion to the COVID response. And the World Bank document really had broken down what money was supposed to go. So including PPEs, including testing, it was a whole list, capacity building and improvement of facilities. So the money was approved. But then from the sources on the ground and the healthcare workers on the ground, they're like, we do not have any PPEs, we are exposed. Then you ask the Ministry of Health, okay, so what's happening? If you have the money for PPEs, really, why are your frontline healthcare workers, including those in isolation units, not covered at all? And the conversation was, we have received this, I think that was about the time also when Jack Ma donation was in, that they are working on distribution on a needs basis. Then another time I had conversations with the WHO country representative about PPEs, and he told me the ministry had told him they were in the high seas. So I asked the ministry, they're like, they're on the way, they haven't arrived. I don't know, issues of cargo, delays of shipping, all of those things that had been affected by COVID. Then after that, there's a time I asked the CS, and he was like, in the next 2 weeks, no healthcare worker will have any complaints about PPEs. 2 weeks came and went, it became a month. People still do not have PPEs. But then now when you ask on the ground, people do not have PPEs. They have to reuse some of the masks that they have, like the N95 masks. What they were buying before for 500 shillings, for example, now they are buying for 5,000 shillings because things had astronomically, risen. So you could see all of these things, they were not making sense at the time. Yeah, and now we can see why it wasn't making sense. While we were genuinely trying to help the country come to terms with COVID-19, bring out the information, help people try and bridge the gap. Clearly, there are other people who are planning a heist.
But I think we still have very many gaps because the stories that we keep hearing, watching, and reading are pointing fingers somewhere, but not necessarily placing a finger on somebody's forehead and saying that this is the person who has, taken away what was supposed to have gone to other people, the public. We still have very many gaps, Mercy. We still do not know, for example, the Jack Ma donation. We are still operating on the insinuation that the Jack Ma donation disappeared. We don't have any evidence to actually show that the Jack Ma donation left China X number of units, arrived at JKIA X number of units, and then distributed X minus 50,000 units.
Mm-hmm. So, Eric, I'm in possession of the distribution list of what was of what arrived and what was supposed to be distributed. So, where the trail ends is who received, because there's no indication of who is on the of that donation list. So, for me, it is up to the National Emergency Response Committee, chaired by the CS of Health, to come out, as Nduh said, and say clearly, this is what we received, this is what we gave so and so. Just come out and say, and clear the air so that we do not have all of these questions and speculations.
So what you're saying that you have so far, sorry to cut you short, is that you've got the manifest. You know how much left China? No.
How much we received?
How much arrived how much arrived at JKIA?
Yes.
So how much?
I do not have that list with me here.
And where it was where it was meant to go.
Yes, and where it was meant to go. So whether it went or were received is what we do not have.
But have there been any question asked to the people who were supposed to receive? Like, you are supposed to have received, let's say an institution, Kenyatta National Hospital, you are supposed to have received 200,000 face masks. Did you receive 200,000 face masks?
Well, what the people on the ground are saying is that they have a shortage of PPEs.
Are we then suggesting that the donation from this particular foundation was supposed to, at some point over a period of time, resolve these matters of PPEs to the point where every public institution would say that they have adequate supplies of PPEs?
Not every public institution, but at the time when they were coming in, the main isolation units were supposed to be covered, and the high risk, we had 14 high risk counties. So at the very least, those ones are supposed to be covered. And the other, what was also on the list, or what was said by the ministry, was they would distribute also on a needs basis.
Yeah.
So that if County X needs, then they are given. And at the time, the outbreak was limited to Nairobi. So you would have expected that your public facilities in Nairobi are covered. But that is the time, remember, we had healthcare workers transmitting the virus to communities. And I remember we did that chain of transmission from one of the healthcare workers to Kawangware. And you could only assume that it's from a lack of PPEs, because this was a healthcare worker who was
right in the front line working at the ministry.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And this was the time when it was limited to Nairobi. So you can't say that it is like now, where the spread of the disease is intense. There's intense community outbreak all over the country.
But let me ask this question, Mercy. Is it possible to know the quantities of PPEs that actually left China?
So remember the Jack Ma donations, both rounds, they actually posted on their Twitter account, and they gave a press release. So these donations were going to the AU, that is in Ethiopia, and then from there, actually Ethiopian Airlines was supposed to distribute to all 52 African countries.
Yeah.
So it was just broken down equally to all the African countries. And we have pictures of our donations coming into JKIA. Yes.
We have them. We have the pictures of these donations arriving at JKIA. But also there's also information of, like you've said, they were supposed to go to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia they're distributed to several other countries.
Yeah.
Eric, what we have are pictures of a certain pallet with certain items on it, an individual standing next to a plane, and we were told these are the Jack Ma donations.
Mercy has a list of the inventory.
Inventory.
Yes, and we actually even fact-checked that consignment because we were able to check from the pictures and what was there to fact-check back then to see if it was actually from the Jack Ma Foundation and Alibaba Foundation, and it was actually the right ones.
Things disappear from JKIA. Remember, even there's a German consignment that disappeared. I wasn't meant to come here.
I mean, it's.
Are you likening JKIA to the Bermuda Triangle?
The bottomless pit.
Just looking at what's going on, I mean, through all of this, what would it mean, Mercy, as we're looking at this and saying, what would it mean that money or donations that were meant to be used for certain things? And I think for us to accept the gravity of such a possibility, we should be able to understand what the money would have been able to do, or what the donations would have been able to help with. Can you give us a bit of an eye into that? If we look around the country now and we look at threats by nurses to go on strike, by doctors to go on strike, and other health workers to go on strike, what could these donations actually do vis-a-vis what we're actually seeing today?
So let me pick out two things that probably Kenyans would clearly understand. One of them is the issue of PPE, and the other one is on testing. So on PPE, for example, you are talking about masks, N95 and good quality surgical masks for your healthcare workers, good gloves and eye shields at the very least. Forget even the hazmat suits and the surgical gowns. At the very least, items that would protect your mouth and nose and your eyes and your hands because you're attending to people. So in the event that you do not have good quality items, one, or you do not have any of these items, it means that person you're attending to, you do not know their status. If they have COVID-19, you will pick it as a healthcare worker. Remember, we even covered this where the ministry was supposed to house healthcare workers working in the isolation units at the very beginning so that they limit transmission because they would use matatus to go home. They would interact with their family members over the weekend. They would go to the markets. So they were supposed to be in certain accommodation to limit this. So you do not have good quality PPEs or enough PPEs. You're still going home. If you pick that virus in the course of your duty, one is that you will spread it, obviously, because you do not know that you have it. Or by the time you are finding out that you have it, it's already some days and you have contacted or come in contact with several people. Two, healthcare workers, I think now we are almost at 1,000, if not 1,000, have contracted the disease. We have lost doctors, nurses, and clinical officers to the disease. These are breadwinners. These are mothers, fathers. You know, they are somebody's children, but we have lost them to the disease. Yet, had we protected them, these are lives that you would have saved.
You're talking about We're talking about the who, what, why, where of the COVID-19. Speaking with us on the line is Dr. Mercy Korir, KTN's medical journalist. In the room is CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Eric Latiff. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Time to take a quick break and then we'll be back. This is on Spice FM and KTN Home at 24 minutes after 8.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
A mostly overcast morning in Nairobi at 14 degrees. Still a little bit chilly for Nairobi standards. Highs of 23 and lows of 13 today. And there's also a chance of a sprinkle later on, where it's already happening in Njeri at 14 degrees. Rain is expected to last for most parts of today. Highs of 21 and lows of 13. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru at 14 degrees. Highs of 23 and lows of 12. And likely to be a wet afternoon here. Thunderstorms will overtake the afternoon in Eldoret with highs of 20 and lows of 12, where it's mostly cloudy at 15 degrees at the moment. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu at 20, highs of 28 and lows of 19, with showers expected later. Kakamega, it's going to be a wet afternoon as well, with highs of 24 and lows of 16, with showers lasting throughout the afternoon. Malindi is partly cloudy at 24 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. And in Mombasa, it's partly cloudy conditions at 24 degrees with highs of 28. Kampala is going to be partly cloudy this morning at 20, leading into a showery afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 19. Shallow fog is what is dealt over the town of Dar es Salaam this morning. Highs of 30 and lows of 22. Johannesburg is mostly sunny at 4 degrees this morning. Highs of 19 and lows of 3. And finally for now, in Lagos, it's a cloudy morning at 24. The sun will peek through those clouds later though, with highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Mellow Spice.
Ever so slowly on the stretch from Survey to Muthaiga on Thika Road this morning. It's not bumper to bumper situation yet, but it's moving. As you get then to the Pangani underpass, you should be fine as traffic joins from Kiambu Road and Muthaiga Corner. All right, so let's look at other parts now. It's tight on the escarpment at Maimahiu as we're heading out of Nairobi. The visibility is low, but there's traffic and it's snaking along for almost 3 kilometers this morning, and this is outbound from the city. Be extra careful, folks, because the weather is contributing to moving very slowly. If we go back to Maimahiu for a minute there, it's both directions, right? In and outbound, the traffic is very, very heavy. We'll take a look at how that opens up in a short while. Spice of MKE, also let us know what you see.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
Seeking
FM,
accountability for
Nairobi.
every penny of the COVID-19 billions. That's what we're discussing this hour in the Situation Room this morning. Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, Eric Latiff, and joining us on the line is KTN's medical journalist, Dr. Mercy Korir. So we were talking about, this is what could have happened if all of these donations basically were put into good use. But do we know that they were not put into good use? I keep going back to that question. Do we actually have anything that we can stand up and say?
Actually, what we're dealing with here is a very straightforward case. Guilty until proven innocent. If we didn't have a history of many things that ought to have gone right going wrong in the Ministry of Health, this discussion would have been perhaps differently slanted. But because of that history, unfortunately, and because the promises were made, it started with making sure there is facilities where people can actually go should they need to be hospitalized. Remember?
Yep.
That went back and forth. Do you know where it is? You couldn't find it. The story went on and on and on. And we took the view, we'll believe it when we see it. All right? I'm going back to factory settings. When I am shown a list of how these PPEs were distributed, and we can verify with the places that have been claimed to have received them, then clearly I will believe.
So we operate on that mantra. Assume fraud unless genius is proven.
Yes, because this is the way in which it has carried out itself before. You yourself told us less than an hour ago about how this mafia house, right? Things have happened in mafia house, but never has a case been taken to court. The closest we've seen was anything related to that was NHIF, right? Where a couple of bosses lost their jobs, arrested, and then arraigned in court.
But ministry
directly hasn't happened.
KEMSA, we keep seeing all the time.
The closest we've seen again is the mess scandal, which is in Parliament. They keep discussing here and there. This happened, this didn't happen. I didn't have the mandate. I did have the mandate. I wasn't secretary at that point. It was somebody else. That's the closest that we have seen. However, we continue to see scandal after scandal after scandal. Okay, let's not even call it scandal. Questions keep popping up, mushrooming here and there. Don't you think that by the time these questions continue to come, even if there are allegations or suspicions of something, shouldn't it ginger people up a little bit to be able to say, okay, here, there's something wrong? So I would go with that. Until and unless you're able to say, actually, you know what, here it is, down to the shilling that was spent, down to the individuals that were helped, down to the N95 masks that Dr. Curry is talking about this morning, which cannot be found. Until and unless that is proven, then I'm going to be of the speculation that the money is in the pockets of people, that the equipment that was donated has been sold again for profit by a few unscrupulous individuals. I am going to assume that until you're able to prove differently, because of the fact that previously things have happened.
What would the
that
issue
have
here
not
be? That
been given
that
any
the
kind of
the
integrity
PPEs
to.
are stolen, and then they are sold to the
Sold
market
elsewhere.
to everybody else, or sold to another government, or sold to the same
Sold.
government.
Sold.
Meaning they didn't end up where they were.
They were
Purpose.
donations. Donations means that you don't take it and then use it for profit.
Look at
It's a
what-
donation to help you fight the disease.
It's not a donation to you to sell so that you can make money. That's not the point. Remember what Dr. Mercy mentioned. You have healthcare workers who are in need of these very, very donations, and they don't have them. So what is clear, the donations didn't get to where they were intended. They didn't.
So where did the donations go?
Now
That's the
Because you see, here's the
question.
thing. You're talking about the same country. So if you told me that you went to other private facilities and you saw people wearing this N95 masks, you'd be like, I can see that. But
No, Eric, the private facilities, I think here we need to separate between the public and the private. When the donations come into the country, the priority is the public facilities, because remember your public facilities attend to 60% of the population.
yep.
So your priority is your public facilities. The private facilities have their own procurement channels. They have a way they procure and process their own things. So you'd assume, or rather not even assume, what they do and they have been doing is to get their own PPEs. And some even had some of these PPEs even before the pandemic, because as you would expect, if you know that it is not a matter of if this pandemic will be here, but when it will be, most of them actually
prepared.
planned and prepared to have those PPEs.
Yeah.
But for the government, what you were doing was just a bit of trying to see meetings, boardroom meetings, developing documents here and there, and hoping that it doesn't get. So when it got here, it got us flat-footed. And one of the questions that we've been asking is, okay, fine, we may have been caught by surprise, or you guys didn't think it was coming. But even before the virus got here, as a ministry or as KEMSA, you still had some PPEs. It's not like we did not have any at all, because we have been managing other high-risk diseases anyway as a country. So it's not like they had zero, they had some. But when we announced the first case, it's like we did not have any of those PPEs, or they were unavailable. They were either unavailable or inadequate. So now this is where the donations started coming in, the issues of procuring to get more PPEs, because now you're trying to plan because you think this disease is going to spread.
Yeah.
So the private facilities are their own ways, but the donations were primarily for your public.
I am not even raising an
And
issue
even-
about the private facilities, Marcy. I think you maybe got me wrong here. I'm raising issues about the gaps in how even the story is coming out to the public. We are very good at identifying that this is the source of a donation. We are very good at tracking until it arrives at JKIA. We're even very good at insinuating who it is that could have stolen what was meant to be a donation. But then it ends there. Where did it end up? Can we say that this PPEs that was stolen then ended up being sold in supermarkets or from private warehouses or from private vehicles to individuals like CT and I? Or did they go to some small hospitals that were not able to procure from abroad? Were they sold to other countries? Were they sold to the same government? How come we have that gap?
Those are the questions we are trying to find out and follow up and see where the trail ends. This is what you call a developing story.
Absolutely. And look, we may not want to look at it, but the fact that you have to ask a question about where things in such multitude went and that you are greeted with such deafening silence is the problem.
Look, not very long ago, long before even COVID, the debate that engulfed us was that of blood, the donation, and the wheretofore regarding it. And it was back and forth. You see, if we're dealing with an institution that has just one or two scandals in a year, and then at some point they're responded to, so you at least you have an idea of what happened, the debate wouldn't be what it is. But this is one ministry that seems to thrive in generating scandals. Just even before you can take breath, you can sort of like breathe from the previous scandal, another one arrives at you. And why do we call it a scandal? It's because it involves money. It involves human lives. It involves something which ordinarily should be straightforward. Donation given, donation arrives, donation reaches destination.
And used, and then thereafter used.
Yes. But this one, it comes, it gets to JKIA. End of story. End of story.
Okay, that is one side of things. And then there's the other side of things, which is raising questions around procurement and the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, where now the EACC has landed there and they're conducting investigations, which is also another story that has been covered. And the questions that keep emerging here are how the procurement was done and how much the companies that were identified to procure, to supply, were quoting, vis-a-vis how much it was costing in the market. Is there a story here, Marcy?
There is a big story there. And from the Senate ad hoc committee, when they compared the pricing from KEMSA and what the market was, KEMSA was costly. And you would expect, because they have the economies of scale, they are supplying everyone in the country, that you would have a way, way lower price, which is competitive. And it's not just about the PPEs, even the medicines that they supply to the counties and public health facilities. When you compare the pricing in KEMSA and that of what is in the market, then you would find there's a huge gap. So the question that some of the facility managers and what the counties have been asking is, if KEMSA is supposed to be the sole supplier of public health facilities, then why is it more costly than what is in the market? And that raises a lot of questions, because what this does at the end of the day is make healthcare less affordable for we, the Wananchi, who are looking for health services. Because remember, at the end of the day, somebody has to foot this bill one way or another. So you'll find that your NHIF, even if you're using it, gets exhausted. So you have to foot this bill. Yet, you would expect that this agency supplying everyone in the country would have very low prices to make healthcare a little bit affordable. So it's not just about the PPEs. I think what COVID has done, and we have kept saying, is it will show the best and the worst in us. So I think what COVID is doing, thankfully for us, is just to unmask what has been happening behind KEMSA and how the Mwananchi keeps losing at the end of the day. Because after all of this, yes, people will pocket these monies, but the person who will suffer is you and I.
You know, even as Eric raises these questions, and he should, and he's right, remember, there's a saying, give a dog a bad name and hang it. You see, this particular ministry cannot be hanged enough. It seems to have a reputation for its capacity to mismanage the healthcare needs of this country. That is the reputation it has acquired. It wasn't given, it has acquired it.
And I think it has been over time because as a country, as a people, we haven't really been alive to what our health rights are. So people have been able to run amok and do as they please. And two, when public health facilities were not working and responding to our needs like they were before. I remember when you were growing up, you just go to your nearest dispensary and you sort it out and you go home. But over time, because of underfunding, mismanagement, and all of these things, private health facilities, private health clinics, quacks, and all manner of people mushroomed. And so when people had alternatives, then you sort of do not see what is happening in your public health facility. So it gives people in that house, in that building, sort of the license to do as they please, to mismanage things because nobody is questioning. But now what we are seeing is that with all the conversations about healthcare, the burdens of paying bills in hospitals, and now with the pandemic where insurance companies are not paying for them, then we are asking these questions, and we are right to, because at the end of the day, if you do not have good healthcare, if you do not have the chance of accessing health facilities when you need to, then your health and your life is at risk all the time. And it's a problem because every Kenyan right now, unless you're super rich, you are at risk of being impoverished by a healthcare bill or literally going bankrupt and finished and poor because of...
or even just dying because you could not access the health care services that you required. And I go back to what Nduh, you were saying earlier, that you need now to be going into the nitty-gritties, into the individuals and personalities. For a long time, when you talk about Afya House, we've even branded it Mafia House, we look at the minister, the PS, and then we, say when those ones are moved, things are going to change. And yet, every new person who comes into that ministry tells you they go in and they find a system that has taken hold of this particular institution and is running it. Maybe we need to get to a point where we start asking the questions, who exactly is the Minister for Health? Because Mutahi Kagwe is the titular head of that ministry, but then there must be another head of that ministry.
What if it's just a story they spin to justify things going wrong?
Over and over and over again?
Yes.
I mean, we look
It's
back
worked before. It keeps working.
Yes.
We look, so who keeps spinning this still?
You get into that particular position and you look at the lay of the land and you realize this is a believable story. Just
keep your head down.
Kick the can, Eric. Your phrase, down the road.
Keep your head down.
So you steal and you just blame it on the cartel.
You don't even need to steal. Whatever it is that goes wrong, just blame it on the cartel.
Or just ignore it.
Take a nice broad spectrum of what could happen. You don't even need to steal. You could have an ostrich mentality to it, bury your head in the sand, so you don't know what happens. So when you ask, you didn't know. And you're the CS.
Which means that you went there and you found that there's something that's going on that you needed to...
Why didn't you resign?
Why didn't you resign?
Why didn't you resign?
Why didn't you open your mouth even at the very least and say, you know what I'm seeing here, I actually cannot deal with it. So that you out there must also understand that there's some rot of unbelievable proportions going on in this place. But everybody just keeps quiet. And then later when questions are asked, they say, well,
I was told
didn't really know what was going on and I was told.
You are culpable.
And
responsibility not being taken.
It's true. That person is culpable, but they are not the backbone of that corruption in that institution. There must be other forces which you must unearth.
Mercy is saying something here. Mercy.
I agree with Eric. If you look at the Uhuru administration, they've had 4 CSs at the very least at that ministry and several principal secretaries. That tells you something. you cannot do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So you remove Macharia, you bring in Mailu, you remove Mailu, you bring in Sicily, you remove Sicily, you bring in Kagwe, and you expect things to be different. Because if you look at it, in Uhuru's administration, Afya House has had some grand heists and grand thefts, let me call them alleged grand thefts in that house, and one of them is still sitting at the Senate on the managed equipment services. And now we have the COVID issues. We had the healthcare workers issues, which actually I think was Mailu's most difficult time. We have UHC, which was Sicily's difficult time, because at the end of it we didn't see anything, and during that time NHIF was in problems. So that tells you something, that probably, not even probably, that our problem is not at the top of the ministry, but the technocrats and the bureaucrats who have mastered the system. They know what works where, and they know what to do and what not to do. So if you sort out those middle people there who have been running the shows, then maybe something will change. But as long as you're just addressing the top and leaving the people who make the cogs move, then we are going to continue with this. So we will talk about COVID millionaires. We will accuse Kagwe.
We'll get him fired.
Then they will come and we will get another scandal. So we need to address what is at the core, at the heart of that ministry. And if it means moving people or throwing them in, because here at the Ministry of Health, unfortunately, it's a matter of life and death. And now with COVID, we are continuing to count deaths.
I dare venture and say that it's also private sector. I mean, there are private sector players who may be involved in this. When you talk about the kind of money that's being made in that ministry, it's not the junior officers who go and procure and supply. They must be responding to somebody's tune. So until the point, look, NYS, you come up with, I mean, a scandal is unearthed in NYS, and individuals are arrested and taken to court, both in public service and in private sector. And they are told that these people were involved in the shoddy business that took place in NYS 1. NYS 2, the same. When you go to other departments, we see the same thing happening. In the Ministry of Health, all we see is changes and changes and changes. During Mwai Kibaki's time, we had the same. There was even a time when this ministry was split into two, public health and medical services. Then it was brought back together. Problems. Same thing. Talk about KMTC, talk about KEMSA,
and you never see heads directly rolling.
Even till look
you just see ministers and PSs moving, but nothing changes.
Over time, and look at what we've been talking about. Even now, Dr. Mercy, you talked about the fact that even with this COVID donations, there was part of it which was supposed to go towards the blood crisis. Till today, nobody has said anything about blood. Nobody has talked about blood. Meanwhile, the entire country, go now, try to donate blood today in a public facility.
Nothing.
What will you be told? We're not accepting because we're not able to deal with it. Till today, country still doesn't have. 6 years after the United States government pulled out of this project and decided that we're going to allow you to do it on your own, but we're not going to just drop you in the sand like that. We're going to release you slowly and we give you the help to be able to get on it on your feet. Never happened. Till today. Can you imagine an entire ministry running something that is actually not moving? It's moving in imagination. It's not happening. But still, heads will never roll. Because we're dealing with top layer things whereby the inside has
There's a cancer. We have never dealt with the cancer. And
Never.
There's a cancer at the Ministry of Health. You can go and fire anybody. We had one of the former PSs in this ministry, Professor James Olekiapi, sat here on the hot seat and he gave us his personal experience. He said, I got into that ministry. I had come from environment. I went into this one. I was like, my good Lord. I'm attending a meeting at the coast and I get a call and I'm told you will receive a call from somebody in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes later, someone calls and says, you know what, there's X amount of money for you if you just approve this particular. And I said, I mean, this is a kind of rot that's there. And you will never ever know how far up it goes or how far down it goes. So until that moment when we are told that ESCC has camped at Afya House, ESCC going to KEMSA, EACC going to whatever other institution, I sit back and I say,
EACC
BS.
going to KEMSA is that you've been having chills and a fever for 4 days and you have a headache and then you realize that something is going terribly wrong and then somebody comes and offers you a Panadol. That's what EACC going to KEMSA is. Whereas what you need is triple bypass surgery, and that's not happening. You take a Band-Aid and you try to fix it on a hemorrhage. It's not working. You must deal with the problem.
Triple bypass
if
is
it were
when
me,
they-
actually, I would,
They move a vein from
if
your
it
leg
were
and put
me,
it
I
in your
would
hand.
just close the entire ministry, send everyone home, and just have a new crop of people who do not know what the system is all about, who will just start from scratch. Like literally bringing down that building and everything and everyone in it. So
It
that
just
it
makes it
start
cheaper
afresh
for the
because-
guys. So instead of now bribing somebody with 30 million because you've worked here for so long, I just give you 3. You have made my
You'll
work so
accept
much
it.
easier.
You like
cannot
that, it's
help
okay. So now,
cannot
with
help
all of, Dr. Mercy, now with all of these things taken into consideration, isn't it then that your first thought then, with all of these things, from blood to mess that is the mess, to NHIF, to all of these things going wrong, isn't it then that your first thought would go to the fact or to the belief that money has been stolen, equipment didn't go where it's supposed to go, donations then were taken and sold? Wouldn't that be the likely thought that you would have?
Actually, yes and no, because if you consider one of the things that happens in a country like ours, quietly but very steadily and very surely, is that the very victims who are the Mwananchi get to a point where they all develop what you call a Stockholm syndrome. They actually identify with the oppressor and they don't even know they're identifying with the oppressor. When you allow yourself to be given 50 shillings, you're identifying with the oppressor. When you allow yourself to receive money simply because you feel you've committed a traffic offense and you want whatever it is, what you're doing is you're identifying with the oppressor, meaning you've acknowledged that what they are doing, you can also do, because that's what you're actually doing. You may not think so. And we can blame the mandarins up there, but at even the lowest level of the Mwananchi, we all participate in this national sport of impunity. It's opportunities that prevent us from being grand and going large scale. But Kenyans participate in this sport wholesale. And it's even considered normal to bribe to sort out a problem. That's why there was a time I said, why don't we just legalize this thing so that we understand?
It's formal business.
We know, and the receipt is issued. For this sort of business, so that I don't go to court, I pay 3,000 bob.
Let's take a break and say goodbye to our audience on KTN Hope. We want to thank you very much for joining us on KTN Home. This is A Situation, Rubens Kenya's biggest conversation. We broadcast on Spice FM every morning on 94.4 in Nairobi, in Mombasa, 87.9 in Kisumu, 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, Njeri, we are on 90.9, and Malindi, 97.7. You can catch us anywhere, wherever you are on your mobile device, by just going to social media, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. We also live stream the show there. We want to say thank you very much for tuning in to our audience on KTN Home. Join us again tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. However, if you are on Spice FM, keep it right here because this conversation continues until 10 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation with CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Eric Latiff, and on the line is Dr. Mercy Korir at 8 minutes to 9.
Spice FM. Njeri. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right,
Mornings
so
done.
news. So what are you saying that we do to... Now, let's start with just accountability for COVID-19 funds. COVID-19 response in everything, in receiving donations, in receiving money, in responding to all that. How do we approach this?
What, Dr. Mercy, I'm asking, is it possible, right?
To
you get
disband.
no, wait now. You get a consignment, just as an example, you get a consignment of equipment. Is it possible that you say, all right, we use this today, and this is how we were able to dispense such, and then have that on record? Is it possible, or is it something that is far from the human imagination?
That's what I was saying. For me, where we are now, it's the National Emergency Response Committee that was chaired by the Minister, the CS for Health, Kagwe, who need to come out and give us a blow-by-blow account of all the donations that came in, of all the monies that were, because we got donations in kind and in cash. The loans that we got, because the World Bank money was not a donation but a loan, and any other, support that we got. And they give us a blow-by-blow account of where each shilling went, where each mask, each glove went, so that we can pick that conversation from there. Unfortunately, from Okari's story yesterday, they were talking about some of the records that KEMSA had at the Senate committee was not truthful. They were lies. So let them bring that out. Now we will decide for ourselves if it is true or not. Because if they tell us that 100 masks were given to Eric's hospital, we'll go and be able to find out if at all those masks were received. Then we will pick the conversation from there. But for me, where the buck stops on these COVID funds in kind and in cash and in loans is at the National Emergency Response Committee, because they were the ones who were tasked with the responsibility of making sure that we do not see the kind of havoc that COVID is wreaking on the country so far. Yeah. So that for me is where the buck stops. And then second for me is we need people to speak up, especially our healthcare workers, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are directly bearing the brand of this, of all of this heist and mismanagement and everything, because they are still expected to go to work, and they are not well kitted, they are not well covered, even their welfare loan is not even assured. They are still paying for their own bills in the same hospitals that they work in. They need to speak up and say some of these things, because that is the only way we are able to get something done. We may not get everything done, but
at least it will be something
done when they speak up. Because by them speaking up and telling us what the issues are, then we, as regular wananchis who are innocently going to seek healthcare services, will be protected. Because as you have kept saying, they are our last line of defense. So we need them, much as they are on the front lines and as the last line of defense. They need to defend us by speaking up and saying what the issues are. Because if you are supposed to get 500 masks and you're only given 20 and there are 500 of you, who will get, who will not get, who will work and who will not work?
It's a big issue.
We
And
need
also,
to
I think,
speak about it.
as the medical professionals speak up, we also need to look back at what we did in 2010. In August 2010, Kenya promulgated a new constitution that said that this constitution, we are now going to be governed by institutions. We have several watchdog institutions in this country that are completely asleep. So we saw, yes, the ombudsman the other day demanding some explanation. We have other institutions like Parliament. We are seeing in Okari's story, one of the senators who was quoted there was saying, now, you know what, this one, it's karma.
It's beyond me.
It's really? What is the role of the institutions in this? And maybe now there's another conversation that we can have. Parliament, for instance, has the complete oversight and mandate to demand a blow-by-blow account of every shilling that has been spent in the fight against COVID-19. After all, they're the ones that approved these budgets. So if Parliament sits back and watches, and then they'll come back one time and say, we asked these questions and we were not given correct answers, it'll be too late, and it'll be an institution that will have failed us.
See, where you have a problem is whenever it is imputed that some of our lawmakers are also involved and they are party to some of these issues that are being raised. So then you wonder, how can they judiciously oversee something that they themselves have a hand in?
They're the profiteers of this thing.
That's another problem altogether. And then looking at it, as you talk about institutions, health they say is a devolved function, other people say it's a shared function, but majority, 90% plus of our health functions are in counties.
Yeah.
So why weren't counties even given these monies directly and these donations directly to manage for their own counties, for example? Why was it all a national government preserve?
Because the plan was to steal. We are coming to the top of the hour, Mercy. Stay on the line. Listen to today's proverb from CT Muga.
When a person is coming towards you, you need not say, come here.
What do you say? Just observe them as they come.
Just watch and wait.
Abdullahi War says the one that comes closest to in his mind is mwenye macho haambiwi tazama. Mwenye macho haambiwi tazama. Comes closer to that.
Macho being the plural for jicho. Okay.
Macho yako moja ama macho tatu yote.
If there's more than one macho, it's macho.
Machosi. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. Keep it right here. The conversation continues.
Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, all eyes on Mombasa this morning, where the road construction that is still going on at Kibarani in Mombasa, plus the heavy rains that they experienced last night, is what is compounding the traffic situation this morning. So it's quite crazy in that area. If you're headed in that direction, you might want to be aware that the traffic is more than bumper to bumper, almost bumper on top bumper at this point, guys. So in Mombasa, it's going to be a tricky morning. Hopefully that will be cleared out sooner rather than later. Mombasa Road is also chock-a-blocked right now, and it's just in a particular area, though. Once you get past General Motors, you should be fine until you then get towards Bellevue, headed towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. And we also saw the accident that happened right around Kiserian, so that's going to affect traffic on Langata Road today. Okay, so this is what we see right now. It's Monday morning, it's manic already, it's crazy around the country. We'll keep an eye on it. Spice FMKE, that's how you can get in touch with us and let us know what you see.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's important to add the half because
Specifics
it's
are good.
Yeah. 2.5 minutes after 9 o'clock. It's The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Joining us on the line this morning is KTN's medical journalist, Dr. Mercy Karir. Mercy, we were talking about institutions and saying, look, these are institutions that are in place, paid for and sustained by the taxpayer. And the role of these institutions is to ensure that things are being done right. Okay? Now, even when we were speaking to Martha Karua last week, she was like, okay, look, we have institutions in place. We are not seeing any of these institutions coming up to speak. We have an institution called the Ombudsman, the Commission on Administrative Justice. After Martha Karua's concern is when we saw the chair of this institution, Florence Kajuju, holding a press conference to say, you know what, the government must account for every shilling. After. We have also seen, for example, the story by Dennis Okari yesterday on NTV was quoting a lot of the current chair now of the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 in the Senate. And she was saying, the karma that's going to befall them, that is the COVID-19 millionaires, is going to be like no other. The Bible talks about 4 generations of a curse that will follow. It'll hit them hard. They will never know peace. This is according to Senator Sylvia Kasanga, who is the chair of the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19. And immediately we saw that on social media, people saying, if the people who are supposed to be watching on our behalf are now saying, now let's leave it to karma to do the job, where are we? Does this point to the fact that we are at a point where we then will not get answers directly from people until God intervenes?
I think more or less as Kenyans, and this is sad to see, we are on our own. And remember, one of the headlines of the Standard when we started covering COVID was that, we are on our own, quite literally, because you find that there's a big disconnect between the people who are sitting in boardrooms and making decisions and what wananchi need. Because let's take an example of when we, in this very, very same situation room, were discussing issues of quarantine, where people were forced into quarantine to pay for themselves. And yet we are seeing at that time, remember, money had come in and some was earmarked for quarantine and isolation. Yeah. Yet Kenyans were made to pay for themselves. When it came to testing, now people are not able to get testing in public health facilities. Yeah. That tells you that what happens in the boardrooms versus what the Mwananchi needs is totally on opposite directions.
There's a huge disconnect.
There's a very, very big disconnect. So we are left to our own devices, to our own ways of, surviving. So when you get that the chair, the ombudsman, is asking the ministry to account the same way we are asking the ministry to account, what does that tell you? When the chair of the ad hoc committee on health at the Senate has given up, what does that tell you? Yeah. That really there is a bigger monster somewhere that these people are unable to slay. Because for me, these are the people who should be acting, not asking for accountability the way we at the fourth estate ask for accountability. And two, why is the ministry, why is the National Emergency Response Committee waiting to be asked to account? Yeah. Yet, it should be obvious that they need to account for Mwananchi. That is our money.
And should be answering the questions directly.
Exactly.
Judy is calling from Lolongo. Let's hear what Judy has to say. Good morning, Judy.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Nduh. CP, how are you?
Good morning,
Judy. Thank you.
Good. What we saw yesterday on TV was very pitiful, shameful, and very embarrassing, I must say. All right? But I have a question for Dr. Maxi Korir.
Go ahead.
And the question to her is this. Now, where I currently work, we took our employees to be tested for COVID at Camry. Mm-hmm. But now this one, we have another batch that we need to send, but it seems that nobody is doing the tests anymore. Where Kenyatta is saying we're only taking people who have symptoms or, who are in hospital. Baghdadi is not doing any tests. Camry has stopped doing the test. So my question is, where are all these numbers where you're saying that the 8,000 who have been tested, are they the mass testing? And if so, where is this mass testing that people can actually go to be tested? And if not, I don't believe that the 8,000 or 10,000 people who've gone to the Aga Khan or the Nairobi hospital where testing is 13,000 and above. So, is it part of this shenanigans that is going on, that maybe the reagents are being held to be taken somewhere else? What is going on?
The issues of testing, yes. Dr. Masi.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That has been a very dicey question. One of those things that sometimes gives me sleepless nights because there is a lot of drama around it. So one is that our test results are late by at least 1 week, 2 weeks.
Yep.
On average, about 10 days, and we covered this. So the results that will be announced today are for samples that were taken say some 10 days ago. This is because, one, we now obviously do not have capacity to test. So people are going out, taking swab samples of people across the country, that they are all queued. So it's on a first come, first served. So there's been a backlog of tests. And they can only do so much because of issues of reagents, personnel, and all of those things.
What are these issues of reagent? Is this also another issue of procurement and no clarity in procurement?
So this one I haven't been able to get to the bottom of. But initially we did not. Okay, so for you to run a test, you need several things. From the swab that you see people going, that will actually take the sample. Then before you get to the lab, you have to transport that swab, which is transported on something called a virus transport media. Then when you get to the lab, there are different reagents that you work on to be able to extract the viral, let me call it DNA, that is RNA, for you to test. So there are several components before now you can run and say you have COVID or not. So if one of these things is missing, you'll have a backlog. Remember, there's a time we didn't have swab sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a time we didn't have viral transport media. Then there's a time we didn't have reagents. So these things, when they miss at one point, they disrupt the whole testing process. And then there's a time we had so many samples being taken. There was a backlog because you've taken so many samples, but you've not changed the number of personnel that you have in your laboratory.
Yeah.
So obviously they are going to work in the same manner, because you don't expect them to work 24 hours a day. They'll work their shifts. They'll get tired at some point. Also, they need a break. So all of these things have really contributed into the whole grinding down of testing, and now they're like 2 weeks late, which for me is really pointless, because if you need a test result today to make a decision, if it's going to come 2 weeks later, then there's no point of actually testing.
And to the specifics of Judy's question, because Judy still is at a point where she'd like to get her staff, her and her colleagues tested, and she's wondering, so where do we go?
So for me, it's not a matter of where do you go. I would look at it from why do you need to know the result?
The result or your status?
Yes, the status, I mean. Why do you need to know the status? Do you need to know the status of everyone or a few of the people? Because at the end of the day, the treatment or the management is the same. You need to isolate. You need to go into quarantine for 10 days. So if it is critical, then there are alternatives where you can get your lab result or lab status immediately, which unfortunately is the private facilities. If it is not critical and everyone can go into isolation or quarantine for 10 days, then that's okay. After all, the new guideline is after day 10 of quarantine or day 10 of isolation, everyone is assumed now to be discharged from isolation and quarantine. Because, yes, after day 10, the virus, even if it is there, it is not infectious. Because we've seen people can shed the virus even up to 60 days. But it does not mean it is infectious. So I would look at it from that aspect. We have actually reached a point where we don't have to make those decisions as individuals, as companies, as associations, because what we are seeing happening with our government, you have to, as you said, we are on our own.
Make our own decisions. Lawyer Okello calling in from Mombasa. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
I hope you're all keeping safe.
We are.
We are trying.
Now, my question is, and probably it is like the previous caller. We would like to know how to protect our families and stuff like that. And we would like to take tests. We don't know where these tests are coming from, but now we see that we have 30,000 COVID-19 confirmations, and the number of deaths are happily low, although that creates a certain suspicion. Are the numbers adding up?
What is your suspicion, Okello?
Either the numbers are being hyped up so that some people somewhere can send money so that some Mandarin somewhere can eat, or as was you brought someone from Somalia who was showing that the grave diggers something,
Yeah,
where the numbers were being hyped down for whatever reason.
So either they're being suppressed or they're being amplified. But you don't think that they are where they are is the correct position?
I don't think they're where they are. I don't think they're where they are because they don't add up. If you have 30,000 people suffering from COVID-19, that was Italy in April. You probably would be having a lot more deaths.
All right. So it's about the same issue, though, that where you started with. It's about testing. You heard what Dr. Matthew was responding to Judy. Why do you need to be tested?
Why I need to be tested is I go to work most of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I need to come back to the house. I can't have tests every day, but I should probably have a general state of where I am so that I can protect my family. You know, if I come into the house and I know that I am positive, then I know that I should isolate myself. But if I don't know, then that puts me and my family and whoever I react, whoever I meet at risk.
Yeah.
So we are hearing that tests have been done, mass tests, but I can assure you there are no tests being done in Mombasa.
Mercy, respond to that.
So one is that look at this test as a certificate of good conduct. And that's what I've been saying all along. It's only as good as at the time that it is tested, that the swab is actually taken, not even when you get your result or status back. Because if I test today, the 17th of August, even if I get my result on the 19th, it only means as at 17th of August, I did not have COVID, if it is negative. It does not say that between 18 and 19, I wasn't exposed and gotten it. So for me, my advice to our good friends from Mombasa and any other Kenyan is that assume everyone has COVID-19 until proven otherwise. Because that way, you'll be able to be more strict on your protective and preventive measures, like washing your hands, maintaining physical distance, making sure that if you need to travel, it is absolutely necessary. When you're in a matatu, you've opened all the windows for good ventilation. So assume that everyone has COVID, and even yourself, until proven otherwise. So that when you go home, the first thing you do is to clean up before you interact with your family members, and make sure also that your home is always cleaned all the time. Because doing a test will not really change much. So for me, the only people that I think deserve or should have their test is somebody who is symptomatic and needs care, because then you need to know what kind of services, health services to provide them. And you need to also prepare, should this person deteriorate, do you have critical care facilities at the very ready for them? Remember that 93% of the 30,000 do not have any symptoms. That means about 27,000 plus Kenyans. It's just because they are being tested either through contact tracing or this quote-unquote mass testing by the Ministry of Health, which really was just like targeted testing, that they found incidentally that, so-and-so also has the virus, so-and-so, not that they were sick. So that means even if we were to test the whole population in Kenya, we can safely assume that at least 90% will not have any symptoms, only 10%.
Really?
So looking at the problems that we have, we should reserve the testing to the 10%. Anyone else who doesn't have symptoms or anyone else who's otherwise healthy should just make sure that they have prevented themselves as much as possible from getting the virus.
Let's hear from Elijah in Nairobi. Good morning, Elijah.
Morning. How are you guys doing?
We're
Good,
fine,
thank
thanks.
you.
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Dr. Mercy is saying. Look, testing, what we've been doing so far is looking at the ability of our government to test, not at the true prevalence of disease. There's a study that came out at least over a month ago where they had taken blood donor samples and they found a positivity rate of 12% in Nairobi alone, which extrapolated was a figure of about 600,000 people in Nairobi over a month ago. Now, just because we are testing, X number of people, and then we say this is the number of people we have, we are giving statistics on our ability to test. Because in one day we were talking about 300 infections. South Africa was talking about 13,000 infections in that day. But if we haven't even tested 10,000 people in a day, how can we then confidently say we only have 300 new infections? If you look at the numbers that are rising in the U.S., it's largely because of the scale of testing they're doing. And this getting a negative COVID test gives a very false sense of security.
Yeah.
Because you then think, oh, I don't have COVID. Yeah, you didn't have COVID 5 days ago. What do you have now? The people you interacted with, how long before you get it? So it would be amazing if we could shift the discussion from how many people are positive to what do we do to stay healthy so that even if we get it, we are in the 90-something% who will be asymptomatic, or mildly symptomatic.
True.
Because that then will inform us. Right now what we are doing is deceiving ourselves and to an extent causing panic. Panic is relevant, but attitude change doesn't occur long-term because of fear. We need to feel empowered, be informed, so that we can have a healthier nation and by so doing reduce the effects of this thing.
That's true. Thank you very much, Elijah. It's a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are talking about COVID-19, the fight against COVID-19, and on a broad scale, demanding accountability for everything. The decisions, like you said, Nduh, who knew what, when, what decision did they make?
Yeah.
Right? And that still has got to be really at the center of a conversation as a country.
It has to be, absolutely. I mean, because this is the thing, the headlines, they splash, we see the news pieces, they're done, and then by the second, third day, it's forgotten. And I dare say that those who sit at the very heart of whatever scandal might be understand also this attitude, understand the national psyche, that people are going to make noise for a minute, and then it's going to be forgotten, and then they can carry on doing whatever it is that they want to do. And I think at the point where we are, it's very necessary for people to be able to open their mouths, make a little bit of a noise, ask the questions until they're answered. And I think there's also this perception that, well, I don't really have to answer a question. Well, yes, you do. And you don't have to, you wait until things are blown out of proportion before you give an answer. Unfortunately, you do. Because when these things came, they were public. When these announcements were made, they were public. When COVID was announced in the country, it was public. On the 13th of March, it was on the steps outside there of that great building, and it was made public. Money that was coming in was made public. Those who were donating it didn't do it in a corner and whisper into someone's ear and say, oh, by the way, we're giving you something. No. It was made public. It was made general for everybody. So guess what? In the expending of the same thing, that must be made public. So when your people are asking you a question, you are duty bound to answer with the truth.
I sometimes get the impression we're talking to ourselves.
It could look. I think it's all right. I think it's all right.
It's okay.
But the problem is that we have that, and we may talk to ourselves, and they say, okay, we're talking to ourselves, we get tired. But guess what? You repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Somebody is bound to hear you.
Well, not necessarily repeat it.
You know what I usually say is that as a fourth estate, at the very least, our job is to make sure that we have documented this. Let the record show that in this same situation room, we asked all these questions, that we had been asking all these questions. Let the record show that we wrote in the newspapers, we did these stories, and we did ask. Because when people are looking back at all of this, we should not be in the part of history where we had a chance to question and ask, and we didn't.
Kept quiet.
Mm-hmm.
We'd rather ask, let them not respond, but we'll keep asking until the day we'll get answers.
But also remember, there are people that we pay to ask.
The people that you pay to ask told you that God will help you.
Now, those ones also, they
Those
need
are
to
the ones
answer.
who said that karma is okay, that the Bible said that they will be dealt with to the fourth generation. That's not an answer. As true as it may be, that's not an answer. What's her name? She herself, who said this and talked about karma, she also has oversight. What's oversight about? They're supposed to be asking the questions. You can't leave it to the heavens and
in
hope
some
that
way, you can feel her frustration. Okay, maybe, at some point she's saying, "Oh, we have done this. We have come up with a report. We have summoned KEMSA. We have summoned all these other personalities and offices, and they've come. They've given us their answers. We've come up with a report, which we've tabled the report. And if you actually listen to what she was saying, sometimes she says, you get frustrated at how slow things are. You come up with a report, and that's all. That's all you do. You come up with a report. The next thing is that report has to be debated. Okay, it takes time before that report is debated. Once it's debated, it also takes time because your colleagues, some of your colleagues who are in the same chamber are, like you said, CT, compromised already.
are the nitty-gritty
So
that
it's in
we're
their
asking.
interest that this matter never moves.
Are the nitty-gritty that we're asking. When we're talking about the nitty-gritty, is the nitty-gritty in that report? Is it that certain questions are being asked to this individual who sits in this position, who had the responsibility for this particular activity? Has that person been asked and the person said, this is what I'm saying? Because usually it's glossed over and said that X amount came and such a person gave. No, going down to the detail. Because guess what? The overarching assumption is that people will not ask the important questions and that people can continue to get away with murder. That's the thing.
Actually,
I'd like to give an example of
Please.
the managed equipment services.
Yes.
When it started in 2014, 2015, back then I was a practicing doctor questioning the managed equipment services. And there was this all hullabaloo about, now we can diagnose cancer, I don't know, we can do all of these things. But when you looked at the record of the equipment being supplied and the whole premise of the leasing, it did not make sense. So we questioned back then as doctors. Then that thing came to find me here now as a journalist, and we're still questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'm happy about it is, back then in 2014, 2015, we never thought it would even make it to the floor of Parliament for questions to be asked, for the CSs to be summoned to give an answer. But now we are there. 7 years, 7 years, it is a slow move, but there's some progress. Hopefully, with this one, the progress will be faster than the managed equipment. So for me, asking, questioning, even if it gets frustrated along the way, is important, because at some point, all of these people, they're not always going to be there. Some are going to die because that is the way of life. Some are going to retire. Some are going, that is life. Other new people will come in and we'll be able to look at these things differently.
Not
so as
a
long
chance.
As there's a record, Eric, it doesn't matter how long it takes.
Not a chance, Dr. Mercy. Since
The wheels of
1963.
justice.
Once it depends on the weight of the person that you are dealing with. Look, if you talk about small fish here and there, you will talk about small fish in NYS, you will take them to court, you will prevent their children from flying to Germany and all. Those are small fish. But the big fish, you will not even touch them. Here we're talking about MES. You wait for that report that comes out of the Senate. The vice chair of that committee asked for more time so they can work on a proper report. That report is expected in the coming weeks. You think it's going to mention personalities and say that this person is culpable and that's therefore we expect investigations or action to be taken against this person? We have never seen such a kind of a report before, so I don't expect such a report to come to the floor of the House in that form this time. Same questions that we're asking about COVID-19.
It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time, but remember...
How long, Mercy?
How long? How many generations?
Wait. Martin Luther King himself told us, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It's not going to happen now. It will take time. It may not even happen in our lifetime, but there will be justice at the end of it.
You're an extremely optimistic individual, Mercy.
That one, and also sometimes, by the way, that one is when you also lift your hands up, just like that senator, and say, we leave this to karma. One day, mtakipata, even if it's the fourth generation. But right now, this current generation is suffering. This current generation is suffering. And the people that are there, they're the duty holders, those are the people that need to be answering those questions today. We don't want their children to be answering that, oh, how did your father acquire this? Your grandfather acquire this? No, we want today. People are suffering today. There's COVID today. There are doctors who are contracting COVID-19 today, getting exposed to, just because somebody somewhere decided to use a company at the JKIA, and that company then played games and took off with donations that were meant to end up with the healthcare workers in this country. Let's take a break. 9:30, it's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, 0719-012-600. It's an issue of accountability for COVID-19 fund. We want to look at what's happening, weather and traffic, and then the conversation continues. Good morning.
Spice FM, Malindi. The weather
All right,
with
it's warming up
Spice
ever so
FM.
slightly in Nairobi at 16 degrees. It's going to be highs of 23 and lows of 13 today with a chance of showers later in the afternoon. It's cloudy in Njeri at 16, highs of 21 and lows of 13, and will be a wet afternoon. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 12. And in Eldoret, at mostly cloudy conditions at 17. Thunderstorms are forecasted for later with highs of 20 and lows of 12 degrees. All right, Kisumu is partly cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19 with showers expected later in the afternoon, as is Kakamega, which is currently at 20 degrees and mostly cloudy. Will experience a high of 24. 26 degrees and mostly cloudy in Malindi, highs of 28 and lows of 23. We'll see a low of 23 in Mombasa as well with highs of 28, where it's mostly cloudy this morning. Taking a look into Kampala, where it's likely to be a wet afternoon with highs of 26 and lows of 19. 30 degrees high and lows of 22 in Dar es Salaam, currently at 26 and mostly cloudy conditions. All right, it's warming up too in Johannesburg, now at 8 degrees. Mostly sunny conditions for the morning, but then gets down to cloudy conditions and highs of 20 and coming down to lows of 7. Clear skies in Lagos at 24 degrees. It'll be a rainy afternoon, however, with highs of 29 and lows of 23. Let's take a last look into Europe, where in Paris, it's cloudy at 18, and it's going to be a wet afternoon with highs of 23 and lows of 16. 16 degrees in London, and partly cloudy, highs of 22 and lows of 16, and it will be a thundery summer afternoon. In New York, getting round to Monday morning at 21 degrees and cloudy conditions. They'll wake up to rain with highs of 28 and lows of 20.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, Mombasa is bearing the brunt of traffic this morning. Still showing to be pretty crazy today with that traffic because of the rains that took place last night and the construction that's going on in the Changamwe area. All right, coming into the city, though, it's getting a little bit better on Mombasa Road. Coming into the city from Thika Road as well. There's a bit of a hold-up from Survey right straight to the Pangani underpass, but it'll take you into town without too much of a problem. Looking at Jogo Road and then coming on the other side of town, looking at Langata Road, is a bit slow as well, but you should be fine getting out of traffic hour officially. So traffic wasn't too crazy this Monday. Hope it's better during the week. Spice FM KE, in case you run into something, you can always let us know. We'll spread the word.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
27 minutes to 10 o'clock. The conversation continues with Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, Dr. Mercy Korir. We are talking about accountability for COVID-19 fight. And the question is, who should be answering these questions?
I look at some of these reports, and I think there's also an element. I don't know if I want to call it fear, or you might feel intimidated without anybody actually opening their mouth. But I think some of these reports could do a lot more in terms of justice to ask questions, because it glosses over the major issues and really doesn't even look into the nitty-gritty, which clearly is important when you're looking at something like this. Because the question that you started asking from the beginning when we started talking about this an hour ago, Eric, or 2 hours ago, is, look, we can talk about the numbers and it looks all very, romanticized and nice. However, what's the detail to the end of it? Who's responsible? You can't tell me that as we sit here, we don't know who's responsible. For example, reception of equipment, disbursement of funds, accountability when it comes to the usage of those funds. There are people there, they have these jobs. Where were they? What were they doing? And I think those are the elements of such reporting that should come out. Doesn't come out, then you might as well have my 3-year-old write the report.
So more detail.
Because we necessary.
Know, if we're talking about donations arrived at JKIA on a certain date, then the government had mandated this particular company to clear the goods. And
this is the individual
who was in charge. And from this point, the goods were supposed to arrive here. At this point, who was in charge? So where did this go?
Eric,
and if somebody comes and says, you know what, I received a call, then tell us who called you.
You know, when you talk of cartels in our ministries, you see, we forget that cartels are actually made of individuals who have arrived at a certain understanding that they want to do certain things in a certain way.
Yep.
Which means, let's move away from Afia House. What makes you think there's no cartel in the Senate? What makes you think there's no cartel in the National Assembly? What makes you think there is no cartel in the Police Service Commission?
There's definitely cartel in the Senate and in the National Assembly. And when you get to a point where it's so rampant and so open, accepted that in such a case, for example, today they are supposed to go back and vote on this formula, right?
Yes.
The conversation among senators is how much who's in the corridors of the Senate distributing money.
To the point where you even have...
And the people that we're talking about are not, corporate individuals.
No.
It's government officers, state officers who are being said to be in the corridors of parliament distributing. Last week it was 5 million. Watu walikata. Walikula kakata.
Well, those are the discussions in reality.
Yeah.
So it actually makes you wonder, the so-called stalemate, are they bargaining for more? What really, that's why I said, as far as I'm concerned, this whole drama
is nothing. It's games.
No.
And
it's choreographed.
And it brings back that issue of that the whole system has been captured. So when you say that Parliament is now investigating this, come on. It just takes somebody to go to the toilets of Parliament and give out some cash and remove some name here, make that report sound like it's very, very, very...
Eric, they may actually even investigate. Dog. They may actually investigate because investigating and getting the heart of the matter enables you to bargain better.
Yeah.
So you actually do the work. But I want to bring the discussion back to the Mwananchi. You see, how did we get to the point where we are complicit in the very things we keep complaining about? You see, take COVID. Huh?
Yeah.
What do you think our real problem with COVID is? Is it that is the disease that kills people? We've had diseases that kill people long before COVID, and they're still killing people. In my mind, it's change. There's something that human beings really do not like, change. And COVID is bringing change in a way that, one, we didn't expect, didn't want, and we have no idea what to do with. But it's change. If you look at even what we're discussing now, it's change. We're saying, this can't go on.
Cannot continue like this.
Now, instead of maintaining the status quo, we are questioning why the status quo has remained the status quo. And we're saying, fine, these things don't happen on their own. There must be people behind it. Who are they? You See, again, you're agitating for change, and there'll be pushback.
Where nobody previously had ever to answer for something that they may
No.
have done before,
No.
or for funds that were used, or for donations that were received. Nobody ever had to be accountable.
No.
And now we are saying it is absolutely necessary that happens.
And we're saying, tell us exactly what you did with this. And it's being treated the same way with the silence that they're accustomed to. And yet, you see, this is where now our thinking, this one isn't going south. This one is going completely wrong. South is a euphemism. How on earth do you get to a point where something as simple, it's not costing you a thing. You're not being asked to give money. You're not it's not even yours.
It's not yours.
Somebody has given
Even
it.
you. Okay.
And it doesn't stop you from whatever thieving you've been involved in before. But you've decided that you must steal everything. And I mean literally everything. What on earth gets into people's minds to the point where they get to this, where they're so insensitive to anything else other than the need for them to steal?
Yep.
What is it?
You keep it for yourself.
Yes. Your whole discussion is about...
And it has been there even since before COVID.
Long before.
We talk about relief food distribution.
Aye, aye, aye.
And people just talk about how somebody who was a recipient of the relief food distribution was in charge of distributing it in certain locality, ended up being very rich.
Yes.
Because they sold it. It did not end up with the people that were supposed to receive it.
In the
And
manner
this
in
is-
which they should have.
This is a culture that we have, and then we've got to get to a point where we say, no, it's got to stop. Jimmy Kimani is calling in from Malindi. Jimmy, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, all of you.
We're fine, thank you, Jimmy.
Otherwise,
Yes.
yes, what I wanted to insist on is that, here who is to blame.
Yeah.
We, the citizens of the Republic of Kenya, we are the ones to blame. Because we don't want to come up together. When the doctors are told not to strike by court, they strike. And people die. But we, the citizens of the Republic of Kenya, we don't want to come and hold our leaders responsible. If today we all collect signatures and we say that we want anybody that has been caught with corruption case must be and should be put in jail for life imprisonment, and all his family assets, listen, all his family assets should be confiscated by the government. This is what we are supposed to put.
But Jimmy, is that not a bit unfair? I mean, what if some of his family members didn't participate in his business endeavors?
Yeah, very good. Look here. Because if you know that my mother's property will be taken and my brother's property will be taken, in NYS issue, we saw a whole family being taken, their banks being clamped, bank accounts.
Yep.
Okay? So, it is very, very simple. You will be responsible over your family. Nobody will try to tamper with anything to do with corruption.
Even your family will hold you accountable.
Yes.
We'll make sure that you don't steal.
Yes.
Because you're putting them in danger.
Thank you, Jimmy. Let's hear from Priscilla. Priscilla, good morning.
Good morning, Latiff. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How is Nakuru?
I'm very fine. Hi, City. Hi, Nduh.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Please, just to lighten up the mood.
Say hello to Dr.
Guys-
Mercy as well. She's on the line.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Dr. Mercy.
Hello, good morning, Priscilla.
Good morning. Just something to lighten the mood,
Yeah.
and then I proceed with what I wanted to say. Do you know, when I started listening to Situation Room, I used to wonder, Latiff, why you're calling someone sweetie. I was like, what? Then, Yani, just the other day, that's when I realized, when I now started following you on social media.
Priscilla, on which side of the bed did you wake up this morning?
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Priscilla. It's
I
sweetie.
laugh or I cry. Because this is so depressing.
It's okay. You can stay with sweetie.
Okay. Anyway, okay. So mine is just there are people who have contributed, most of the things I wanted to say. But one thing I'm just begging and pleading, I think Nduh and Dr. Mercy might have said this. I'm just begging the fourth estate. Do not give me a BBI headline. You're the ones, I know I'm shifting blame, but when the newspapers and other media houses and other media forums start focusing on other things, this is how we forget. So I said on Twitter and on Facebook yesterday when during the expose, I said as long as we haven't brought this disease under control and we haven't put those culprits, those sickening human, they're not even human beings, we've not put them behind the bars, can these trend, please?
You're very right.
Don't give us BBI.
Bravo.
Let it be in our faces because these guys are depending on us to do our Kenyan thing and
exactly.
We'll forget, we'll move on, or we'll even pick up somebody and sacrifice them. We'll actually hang Mutai Kagwe right up there and say, get out.
So you guys are the expertise in the field. You have the means. Keep it trending until we just prick those conscience of theirs.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Cheers.
And I think it also gets to a point where we need to get to a level where we're starting to name names. All right? So this particular company, who are the directors of this company? What is their relations to anybody else in this organization? Could they have used their position?
Eric, do you remember the newspaper articles with that brought out the matter of procurement of COVID-related issues in the county? They did mention names.
Yep.
They would mention company. They would even tell you this company was registered last week. Yes. This company was given the work, they couldn't do it. Yes. So I think Priscilla's prayer is actually being answered. It is happening, but we need to move further up. Who are the people who encourage these people to form a company the week before so that they could get this tender that they couldn't manage?
These people, who are the godfathers? Who are the main
beneficiaries?
people?
Who are the ultimate beneficiaries of this process? Because at the end of the day, you find like one of the companies that was highlighted yesterday, and it had actually been highlighted in the same studio in the papers, had a certain lawyer who no one could really trace. So you're even wondering if this is a real person who registered the company just before getting the tender. So the question is, whose hands are these that are, controlling this puppet?
Who's the real owner of a company?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
where does that back
But remember, Mercy, fingers have also been pointed to us as the fourth estate, that we've also been complicit in this. Because it has also been said that part of the reason why some of these names never get to where they should get to is because some of our people are spoken to.
Or seen.
Or seen.
Influenced in one way or the other. Like now, the way I'm going to be influencing you by changing this topic and bringing Geoffrey from Mombasa into the conversation.
Yes, just when I'm warming up.
Diverting your attention to
Geoffrey, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Eric, City, and Nduh, Mercy, Dr. Mercy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for the conversation, but it's unfortunate I want to accuse the members of the Fourth Estate.
Go ahead.
As much as you are helping us to know what is happening in this country, actually, is really making us sick. Because ranging from Goldenberg scandal to the Anglo leasing and many others that have lined up, none of them we've seen people brought to books. So it's actually making us more sick. The only solution I feel as Kenyans, since we've decided not to be patriotic, we should just learn to live with it as we've learned to live with HIV, and now we are told to learn to live with COVID. So let us just learn to live with it because I don't see any
Geoffrey, what are you saying?
happening on this thing.
So we should stop highlighting any stories around COVID-19?
See, what is happening is when something happens, when a scandal is brought to the limelight, to the public limelight, it runs for a while, then you forget about it. You see, the moment you keep on discussing that conversation over the same thing and at least trying to find ways on how it should be approached, then I think a solution can be found. But you see, once you brought it on the limelight, then sometimes you forget about it until such a time when you hear there is a case going on, then you bring it again, then it goes like that. So I feel we should learn to live with this thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeffrey. You were saying, City.
I was saying that Jeffrey has a point. He actually does have a point, but if I may mitigate, the things happen on a daily basis. And sometimes we are even spoiled for choice as to what to discuss and what not to discuss and to what level we should discuss it. But his point is well made, and we've understood it. And perhaps on occasion, since he has our number and he has our details, every time he thinks there's something important that ought to be looked into, he could simply suggest and tell us.
Poke and prod a little bit, sure.
Prod us and say, guys, you've forgotten about this issue and you discussed it a while back.
Yep.
Yeah, so please, can you revisit it?
Let's go to our friends in Nakuru. We start with Karaoke from Wakulima Market, and I also see Zachary is on the line. Karaoke, good morning.
Good morning to you guys. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Karaoke.
Thank you, Karaoke.
Well, I want, first of all, to congratulate you, and especially Coril. I've been hearing about her for quite a long time, maybe discussing various problems that you are facing in terms of health. But my question is, despite what you've been doing all along, the fourth estate, you've been doing a very good job. Let me say that. I will not say like my friend who has just left right now. I would say you have done a very good job to educate Kenyans or to what they are supposed to do. But my question is, where are Kenyans? This is what I've been saying all along. Why should we keep on talking? Look at the Belarusians, for example. They are on the road for the 70th day. I don't know, something like that, 60th or 70th day. They are demonstrating. They want their president out because he's doing nothing. Symbolical to what is happening in our country here. The government that we elected, that at the time is doing nothing, especially if you think of the COVID. Leave around any other thing. The COVID alone has shown to Kenyans that we are alone in this country. Where are you, Kenyans? It's time for us to wake up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Karaoke. Zachary.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Oh, you're there.
How is everyone?
Everyone is fine. Thank you, Zachary. How are you?
Oh, I'm happy. Today I've cleaned something. As pertains the word CT. Now I'm a bit wiser.
You are aware that I'm listening, huh?
I am.
Please continue, Zachary.
And you are doing good work. And Mercy is there. Mercy, hi.
Good morning, Zachary. I'm here.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. You said something that underpinned everything, yeah? That you said the work of the fourth estate is to record. It is to tell the people the truth. So that when the right time comes for us to actually elect those who are going to represent us, or who are going to lead us, we are supposed, it is our duty to go back to the records, look at them the way Mercy has said, and be informed as we make our decisions. Yeah. So the fourth estate has done its work. It should continue doing the same work.
Yeah.
It should not matter that okay, we are doing this and not changing. No. Eric and Latiff and Mwalim and everybody else who is in the fourth estate, you are paid, and this is a vocation. In fact, it's a vocation. It's more than even being paid. It is the work of the people and God that you are doing to inform people that this is the reality. Now, if somebody who has stolen decides, okay, now I'm going back to the grassroots and asking these people to elect me, it is me, Zachary, the humble as I may be, to question. Now, you guys.
To use the information that you have.
Yeah. I was what Mercy said. It is my duty to refer who is Eric, so that as I engage with him, I know exactly, am I engaging with a hyena or am I engaging with a sensitive person who cares about me, or a greedy whatever who is ready to take all my money and to pay money as well, it will come from what I have invested in engaging with the fourth estate. Yeah.
True. So you have a
Thank you,
responsibility. Asante sana Zachary. The responsibility of everybody, plus the responsibility of the duty bearers. And I keep going back there. As long as we sit back and we call these people mheshimiwa, and they're the ones who are getting into these particular offices, and they're using their position to see, okay, so we have approved this budget. How much of this budget am I going to dip my hands in? As a person who has sat in the health committee, as somebody who has sat in the budget committee of parliament, as somebody who has sat in parliament and approved budgets, and then I go back and now start asking the officers, all right, so now unajua tumepitisha hii pesa yenu. Now
ile kazi ngumu tumefanya.
Kazi ngumu sana tumefanya. Sasa PPEs niko na kampuni.
Kwanza ina supply ile first class.
Unadulterated.
And you know very well.
Ile ambayo haina mashimo mingi. First class. Airaruki hata kinyeshewa.
Munaita K what?
K90 ngapi?
K95.
Hiyo.
Hiyo. In fact, hii yangu ni K100.
It's funny, but it's true.
Yeah. From the legislators, definitely, to Mwananchi, to the fourth estate, everyone, if they played their role, will not be here, because you find in other countries where there's even a rumor that there's a scandal, they resign.
Yeah.
But here, people come and boldly say, over my dead body. So they walk around with their heads high like there's nothing.
Yep.
So everyone has a role to play. And for me, until the day when the people behind the people are felled by these allegations, such that it doesn't matter who, whether you're related to the big people in the big houses or in the big offices, you come down with those people.
Yep.
Only then can we start seeing some change. Because
Absolutely.
as long as people feel like they're protected by the who is who in the country, they will walk around. Like right now, people are going home, hugging their children and sleeping well, yet there are families who have lost their children who have lost their parents because of COVID-19, just because they didn't have PPEs, for example, just because they didn't have testing early enough, just because they didn't have oxygen.
Yeah.
Yet they go home to their children and they play and they sleep soundly.
Oh, yes. And these sharks, in fact, even read your stories contemptuously saying,
yeah, right. They think they can touch me.
Surely,
He's
mercy.
back at it again.
You didn't even write the actual number.
Or exactly how I did it.
Yeah. and you think these journalists of this country,
they can't even get their facts right.
Yeah.
How dare they?
How dare they
even
accuse me of
suggest
stealing
that
just
my
10 million?
Yes, when it was clearly 150.
I mean,
it's unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. But we cannot give up.
Can't keep
We
quiet.
must keep
shouldn't.
raising these issues.
Yeah.
We must keep pointing fingers at the right offices. We must also make sure that we unmask those that we pay so that they can do this work. They need to do the work.
But we also must not let the ordinary citizen off the hook,
Yep.
because they are party to this entire drama.
Totally.
And you must get to a point where people understand that public service means precisely that. That if your interest is to actually make oodles and oodles of money, then choose another line of
work.
Then get out of here.
But this one of ours, people get into public service because that's where you make easy money.
Primarily
Yes.
to make
The
money.
reason.
Yes.
Primarily to make
And
money.
that's not what the public service is intended for.
Oh, my goodness.
But you know what makes it worse is that when it spreads even to our churches and religious setups, and that mindset takes residence and becomes permanent, then our problem is even compounded.
Yep.
further.
Yes.
Coming to the end of the show in about 2 minutes. Dr. Marcy, you've heard today's proverb, right? And CT is asking whether we know any from our mother tongues, any proverb that comes close to this. So CT, start with the proverb in English.
When a man is coming, or when a person is coming towards you, you need not say, "Come here."
Does it resonate at all? You know, some do, some don't.
Maybe in my mother tongue. My mother tongue, of course not. I'm not very privy to the proverbs in my mother tongue. But maybe mwenye njia mpishe. That can still be considered mother tongue, right?
Very true. Yes, it is. It is. Swahili is definitely our national mother tongue.
It is mwenye nguvu mpishe.
Or it's mwenye nguvu, yes.
A little editing here and there.
No
surely.
problem.
We're not going to quibble over a word or the two here.
That could have a totally different meaning, but okay.
Nduh.
Yes?
In Nigerian?
I don't know.
No, start with Abi.
I beg Joe, leave that thing.
There's no language like Nigerian.
If Mondu come your way, you know, no say come here.
I do have something to say, though.
Okay.
Happy birthday, Eric Latiff. Happy birthday to you.
Eric has handled that one well. Eric, you've taken it in well.
Oh, very well.
Man, for a guy, you're doing okay.
It landed very well. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Dr. Mercy Korir, for speaking to us today. And keep doing the good work.
Thank you. We shall keep at it. We'll continue probing and asking.
Yes, indeed.
And making the comfortable uncomfortable.
Very good. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for another conversation in the Situation Room. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.